The story kicks off showing a bright, bustling street packed with people enjoying the festive night vibes. The mood is pure joy, with laughter echoing right next to the Christmas decorations. Just then a family walks by. The parents ask their little girl if she had fun, and she enthusiastically replies it was the best day ever. Together they keep walking, enjoying the special occasion. Completely enchanted, the little girl makes a comment about how massive something nearby looks. Meanwhile, our MC walks in the opposite direction, totally annoyed that he constantly has to shrink back just to let others pass. Walking through the crowd, he realizes he seems to be the only person totally isolated on that street. Thinking about this, he heads toward the entrance of a subway station. But suddenly, out of nowhere, he comes to an abrupt stop. Something catches his attention completely. Looking to the side, he spots another person who is completely isolated in the area. It is a guy dressed up as Santa Claus, huddled on the ground next to a sign. The sign invites people to drop their wishes for Santa request. Our guy would normally ignore and keep walking. However, today is Christmas Eve, the exact day his parents passed away in a disaster, leaving him all alone in the world. Touched by the moment, he pulls out his wallet, feeling inclined to help out. Holding a few bills in his hand, our guy hands the money to the man, asking him to take it and assuring him it comes straight from the heart. Next, he drops the money into the donation box. But suddenly, Santa grabs his hand super tightly, praising his incredible generosity. The guy in the suit drops to his knees, saying he wants to return the favor and asking to hear what our guy truly desires. Caught off guard by this bizarre move, our MC thinks the dude has lost his mind and demands he let go of his hand. He does everything he can to break free, using all his strength. However, the old guy has insane strength and says he is there to grant the wish of a kind soul, leaving our guy totally bewildered because he cannot move an inch. The mysterious dude practically starts glowing while begging, explaining he cannot return to the Christmas village without hearing a wish first. Realizing he has no choice, our MC asks if the guy will actually let him go if he spills his wish, and the old man agrees right away. So he starts thinking about what his wish should actually be. Jokingly, he says he wants to win the lottery. However, the man gets annoyed and demands the wish be made from the heart. Understanding the requirement, our guy decides to be honest with himself. His biggest need is to have a family couple who will never abandon him and will stay by his side forever. With that in mind, he asks for a wife who resembles a rabbit and a daughter as adorable as a mongoose. Pleased, Santa senses the honesty in the request, noticing that our guy has spent a super long time trapped in total solitude. The old man celebrates his luck in bumping into a soul so similar to his own. With a pretty creepy expression, he promises he will find him a pure-hearted wife and a gorgeous daughter who will honor her father. Then he wishes our MC all the best and finally lets go of his hand. Our MC quickly backs away, calling the man a total lunatic, while Santa shouts that he will use every bit of his power to make that wish come true. The weird dude keeps yelling that the whole village is rooting for him, making our guy completely convinced the man has gone off his rocker. Moments later, the subway train rolls onto the platform. Once inside the train, our MC steadies himself so he does not fall over. Sitting down, he tries to make sense of whatever that crazy Santa was rambling about. Despite how weird the whole thing was, he admits his wish was actually sincere. Looking at a poster of a happy family, he concludes that his only true wish is to finally find happiness. Exhausted, he closes his eyes to rest for a bit during the ride. Suddenly, he wakes up feeling freezing cold and smelling a super weird odor in the air. A bit dizzy, he sits up with his hand on his head. As he opens his eyes and looks around, he gets totally creeped out. He realizes he is being hauled in a primitive wooden cart down a dirt road. Locked in a cage with his shirt off, he tries to figure out where on earth he ended up. Right next to him, he notices a bearded guy with a totally miserable look on his face. He also spots another blonde captive leaning against the bars. Taking in the space filled with people in the exact same boat, he thinks this whole setup looks suspiciously like medieval times. Suddenly, he snaps his head around in panic as he hears noises coming from outside. Clinging to the wooden bars, he realizes he cannot understand a single word the guards are saying. Everything around looks straight out of a fantasy story, complete with a bizarre language, and people who look nothing like what he is used to. He wonders if he is dreaming or if reality is hitting him like a truck. Finally, it clicks, and he deduces he was transported to a completely different world. The shock is so intense he collapses onto the floor of the cart, breathless and shivering from the cold. Trying to pull himself together, he looks at one of the guys slumped in the corner of the cage and wonders if the dude kicked the bucket. Crawling over to check and apologizing for the intrusion, he confirms his worst fear: the guy really expired. He turns his back on the corpse and chooses to focus entirely on his own survival. Slumped on the floor, Santa's promises about using all his power echo inside his head. Completely defeated, he wonders if this was that promised happiness, and if he spent his whole life misunderstanding the word. In a total panic, he inwardly begs to wake up if this is a nightmare, since he has lost track of how many days have passed. The cart keeps rolling endlessly through uncharted landscapes. During this time in captivity, he figures out a few key facts. First, everyone here, including him, are prisoners destined for forced labor. The second realization comes from watching the sentries who watch them non-stop. It becomes painfully obvious that the only reason they are being moved is to be sold off. During one of the pit stops, the cage lock is aggressively unlocked. The guards line up the prisoners, while a local chief selects only the ones in good physical shape. Even though submitting to such a humiliating condition was a hit to his pride, he starts holding onto a tiny sliver of hope. Getting out of that awful cart was his only chance to escape, and given his fit physique, he figured he would get bought up real fast. So he stood tall, confident that this would be his ticket out of there. However, all those high hopes are crushed after passing through several villages without a single person showing interest in him. With every settlement left behind, his frustration only grows. And the endless cycle of the grueling journey resets on the dirt road. After getting beaten up by the guards, he is shoved hard onto the wooden floor, asking himself how things got this out of hand. Lying flat on the ground, Juin recalls old advice about living life to the fullest, but right now he just wonders if there is even a point to living like this. Reminiscing about his childhood, Juin hears a voice from the past asking if he had finally learned his lesson. Stranded on the floor of the cart, he calls out to his parents in his mind, asking if he will be able to endure such a harsh trial. Right then, the memory of that weird Santa returns to his mind, swearing to use all his power to make his wish come true. Disgusted by the irony of it all, our guy reaches out for a fork lying on the floor, wishing that so-called happiness would blow up along with both realities. He grips the item tightly, realizing that the only thing that matters right now has nothing to do with the request he made. With a sudden move, he stands up and grabs the bars, convinced that true joy would simply be kicking the bucket to escape the pain. However, his expression quickly changes as he realizes this dark thought does not actually reflect what he wants. The blurry image of his beloved former family pops into his mind, leading him to conclude he does not want to end his life in a hole like this. Overwhelmed by exhaustion and sadness, he stays quiet, just resigning himself to his cruel reality. Suddenly, a hand reaches through the bars, offering a chunk of bread. Looking up, he sees a super kind woman offering the food out of pure goodwill. Right behind her, little girl Lizzie peeks curiously through the cage bars, catching our guy's eye. The little girl steps closer while holding onto the wood, staring at him innocently. Totally frozen at the sight of those two gentle souls, our MC drops the fork onto the cage floor. Far away from there, the narrative shifts to a rustic wooden cabin tucked away inside the forest. Inside the house, the woman and Lizzie are sitting at the table, sharing a humble meal in a peaceful setting. The little girl tilts her bowl, scarfing down everything with a huge appetite. Taking advantage of the moment, the woman slides her own plate over to the child, suggesting she eat a bit more. Holding her belly, the girl looks at the food, still wanting to eat. The adoptive mother explains she is giving up her portion specifically so the little girl can be well fed. However, Lizzie declines the offer, stating that if the woman is hungry too, they should share the feeling together. Blown away by the kid's maturity and affection, the woman goes silent for a moment. Then she agrees with the girl, emphasizing that now it is just the two of them against whatever comes. The peaceful moment is shattered by aggressive knocks at the door, accompanied by the village chief calling out for her. Terrified, the woman wraps the child in an embrace, while the man outside announces that the elders decided to marry her off to one of the newly arrived captives. Dumbfounded by the news, she hears the elder order her to get ready to head up the mountains with her future husband the next day. Before leaving, he commands her to bring supplies at dawn to welcome the men at the village entrance, leaving the woman hugging the child in sheer horror. Slumped on the dark floor of the house, she despairs because she never expected them to make such a decision so fast, terrified of being mistreated all over again. Trembling, she squeezes the girl in her arms, knowing that running away from that place is simply not an option. Looking at the little girl's peaceful face, she feels terrible about the situation, but she knows she could never leave the kid behind. The mere thought of abandoning the girl to the world again is something she flat out refuses to do. Memories of the girl's painful crying flood back into her mind. The girl used to cry uncontrollably, her face covered in tears and her heart completely broken. Back then, the girl spent her time weeping on the floor of the house, tasting the bitterness of loss. Watching the scene from a distance, the woman used to wonder what her own future would hold from that point on. Huddled in the corner of the room, she begs herself not to face all that horror ever again. Searching for solace, she turns her gaze toward the bed where the child rests. Seeing the little girl clutching a teddy bear, she deduces the trauma must be just as deep for the kid as it is for her. Lizzie is just a 5-year-old orphan without even a real name, left behind by the man who passed away. Recalling her own tragic backstory, the woman remembers the day she was sold off by her own father for a single rabbit pelt. Her arrival at that distant little cabin in the forest marked the beginning of a living nightmare. Before she could even unpack her stuff, she was thrown to the ground by the man who would become her husband. From that moment on, violence became routine, crushing any sliver of hope she still held about her new life. Slumped on the wooden floor, dealing with the aftermath of her partner's cruel actions, her life was absolute misery. Yet in the middle of all that darkness, a tiny blonde figure timidly popped out from the corner of the room. Covered in bruises and lacking the energy to react, she kept lying on that freezing floor. At that moment, the little girl walked over to her, bringing the only ray of light in that awful place. The child flopped onto the floor beside her, keeping her company in her most painful moment. That angelic-looking girl was the only human being who had the bravery and compassion to approach her. Sometime later, the man headed into the mountains and never returned, leaving the two of them alone in the house. The villagers reported that he met a gruesome end out in the hunting grounds and was never coming back. The news of his demise brought huge relief, but it also sparked immense anxiety about tomorrow. Lacking a protector in the village, she knew her situation was far from safe. In that region, a woman living alone was an easy target for any kind of cruelty from outsiders. Back to the present, the sun begins to rise as the two walk toward the village entrance. Hyped by all the commotion, the little girl pulls on her adoptive mother's clothes and points ahead. The kid alerts her that a huge transport vehicle just arrived in the area. The transport comes to a stop, revealing the captives locked in the back under the woman's watchful eye. Following the elder's orders, she slowly approaches, holding the basket filled with requested supplies. Inside the cage, our MC raises his head in surprise as he notices someone approaching. When their eyes lock, Juin opens his eyes wide in total shock. Suddenly, a dark memory of cruel violence and wicked insults flashes on screen. An aggressive guy was berating their tears, acting completely ruthless. That terrifying figure stood over the woman and the girl, claiming their behavior ruined his appetite. Overwhelmed by terror as her trauma resurfaces, the woman's eyes fill with tears. Noticing the clear fear on her face, our guy's expression shifts, feeling sympathy for the pain they carry. Trying to ward off her fear, she reaches out with a trembling hand and hands the bread through the bars. The two remain still outside, waiting for him to take the small snack. The modest food is offered with an attitude full of generosity and hesitation. Completely disarmed by that display of kindness, he drops his rage and lets go of the fork, captivated by their presence. The silent connection is interrupted when the village elder approaches, asking if the newcomers are already present. The old man informs them that the authorities will handle the intake and orders her to hand over the basket and return to the village immediately, an order she obeys with her head bowed down. Unable to talk back, she calls the girl and both turn their backs on the cart. Before leaving for good, the girl glances back one last time at our guy. Clutching the bread tightly, our guy watches them leave, sensing his future just transformed forever. With the food in hand, Juin finally tears off a piece, enjoying that small bit of comfort. Right then, the guards unlock the cage grate with a loud bang, shouting in their gibberish language. Without any care, our MC is dragged out aggressively and tossed onto the dirt ground. Due to the fall, the bread slips out of his hand and lands in the dirt, ruining his snack. Right after, he is led along with the other captives to an open clearing in the woods, where the guards round them up. Juin gets a massive jump scare when one of the guards suddenly pulls out a knife. However, the guard only uses the blade to slice through the ropes binding the prisoner's wrists. After that, the guards activate some glowing papers, leaving our guy totally speechless as he realizes it is some form of magic. Without understanding a single thing happening, he wonders what insane world he got dropped into. A sentry finally approaches our guy to undo his bonds. Juin stays quiet while the dude cuts the ropes that kept him tied up for so long. Once the job is done, the guard stares at him in silence for a brief moment. Untied at last, our guy sets his gaze on a small, distant settlement nestled among the foliage. Far away from there, outside that simple little cabin, a bag of supplies is dropped on the ground. The village elder informs the woman that the village will provide supplies for a while, since her new husband does not speak the native tongue. The old man points out that her ex-partner was hated by the village, and that the newcomer must have a completely different personality. The chief mentions that the guards reported the prisoner seems to be just a regular guy. Listening silently next to Lizzie, she hears that our guy has super soft hands. Holding the girl's hand, the woman feels a sense of relief, discovering his hands do not look like those of a violent man. She tries to calm herself down, figuring that if he focuses on working in the mountains, they might be able to live together peacefully. Taking a deep breath, her only wish is that he turns out not to be a brute like her ex. Looking at the sleeping child, she prays that the young man will just let them live in peace in their own corner. Suddenly, aggressive knocks on the door shatter the silence, accompanied by a shout telling them to unlock it fast. Overcome with instant terror, the woman defensively wraps her arms around the child. The door bursts open violently, revealing the return of the group that was outside. The village chief loudly announces that he brought the guy she is going to marry. Tense as ever, she hears the old man command the newcomer to step inside the house. Juin drags himself through the door, showing massive fatigue. Hugging the child on the floor, she is flabbergasted to recognize our guy, wondering why they brought someone so utterly drained. While our guy tries to make sense of where he is, the woman can barely process that this guy is going to be her husband. Checking out the young man, the woman shrinks back even more, intimidated by his tall stature. Juin lowers his head and notices her huddled on the floor. Our guy immediately recognizes her as the charitable person who offered him food in the cage. He observes her condition, unable to wrap his head around why she is shaking so hard in fear. Out of nowhere, the elder shoves our guy's back while talking in his incomprehensible dialect. Off balance from the push, Juin stumbles a step forward, making the woman cringe in horror. Our guy turns around bewildered toward the villagers, trying to understand what they want from him. Without missing a beat, the old man steps up and grabs our guy's arm firmly. Quick on his feet, the dude grabs the woman's hand and joins it with our guy's, forcing the two to stand together. The old man backs off laughing, stating that now they actually look like a real couple. Holding her hand in an awkward atmosphere, our guy realizes the severity of this bizarre situation. Right then, the memory of that creepy Santa comes rushing back, promising a pure wife and a daughter who would honor him. He looks at the woman in front of him, noticing her expression actually looks a lot like a rabbit's. Next, he looks down at little Lizzie and spots the absurd resemblance the girl has to a mongoose. Completely shocked, it finally clicks, and our guy realizes that crazy Santa dude actually kept his word. Looking at the two of them terrified of him, Juin thinks that the old guy really did not need to send him to a whole another universe for this. The memories of his time in captivity resurface, making him wonder why he had to suffer so much just for a wish to be granted. Rage starts taking over as he tilts his head down with a heavy look. Driven by anger, our guy swears to himself he will trash that insane Santa if they ever cross paths again. However, his threatening posture frightens the woman and child even more, leaving them shivering. Sometime later outside, Juin walks through the woods followed by one of the villagers. Our MC feels super frustrated that he cannot understand a single word the guy is saying. The local walks up casually and reaches his hand out toward our guy. Confused by the sudden move, our guy wonders if this is an attempt at a handshake. Deciding to go along with it, he reaches out and shakes the local's hand. Violently, the guy squeezes Juin's hand with absurd strength. Completely unbothered, our MC suspects that crushing someone's hand until it hurts might just be a bizarre greeting in these parts. The local tries super hard to squeeze even tighter, attempting to intimidate the newcomer. Out of patience, our guy simply squeezes back with way more force, instantly crushing the guy's arrogance. The dude drops to his knees screaming in pain, while Juin lets go with a look of pure boredom. After pulling himself together, the man gets up furious and hands a simple bow to our guy. Weapon in hand, Juin is confused by the move, but notices the guy does not want to fight. The local starts dramatically gesturing with his arms, trying to simulate a hunter's stance. Watching the performance, our guy finally gets that the goal here is to teach him how to hunt a rabbit. He adjusts his grip on the bow, accepting the fact that he will need to learn how to get his own food. Excited, the guy points repeatedly at a specific spot in the bushes. The local directs our rookie's attention to the prey he just spotted. Right over there, a tiny white bunny is chilling among the plants. Juin prepares to shoot, but mentally admits he has never held a bow in his entire life. On one knee, he pulls back the string, remembering that hitting a target is super tough and wondering how he will pull this off. Focused, he pulls the arrow tight as an unseen energy starts glowing around the weapon. He releases the string, but the arrow flies way off target and jabs hard into the ground. The local points his finger and bursts into a loud laugh over the fail, leaving our MC super embarrassed. Juin just looks away with a red face, totally annoyed by the man's mocking. Far from that chaos in the woods, the woman walks with Lizzie through the village carrying a simple basket. Surprised by the sudden arrival, Juin turns his head back. He keeps staring at the two without saying a word, just taking in their presence. Watching the woman walk with little Lizzie while carrying a basket, our guy realizes that she is his bride. Heart beating fast, he cannot take his eyes off them, feeling the weight of this brand new reality. Way in the background, the local who got his hand crushed runs off in a hurry, leaving the two women confused about what happened. Next, they lay a cloth on the forest floor in an atmosphere of complete quiet. Sitting together in that space, the scene turns into a spontaneous little picnic. At that moment, a bowl of hot stew is handed to our MC. While he eats in silence, the woman and the girl scarfs down their food super fast and eagerly right beside him. Suddenly, Juin stops eating and quickly turns his head toward them, instantly startling the pair. However, he just keeps watching the scene, quietly taking everything in. Unable to hold back his emotions, he finally shows a genuine, affectionate attitude toward his new family. In his mind, the word family always felt completely alien, from his school days all the way into his 30s. Watching the two eat together, he feels that a family was finally granted to a guy like him. Holding the bowl, he thinks it would have been better if this happened naturally, but after all the horror he faced, the order of events does not even matter anymore. Staring up at the sky, our guy takes a deep breath, admitting he wants to destroy that Santa for everything he went through, but at the same time feels grateful. Breaking the quiet of the camp, he shouts out his thanks to the mysterious old man. The next day, things start moving at a fast pace as they head up a mountain trail. Carrying heavy gear on his back, our guy notices they are struggling and wonders if they can keep up the pace. Walking right behind, the woman and little Lizzie are breathing heavily from exhaustion, with barely any energy to keep climbing. Super frustrated by the language barrier, Juin regrets not even being able to ask if his new wife is feeling okay. Determined to change things, he knows he needs to adapt to this new world as fast as possible. Thus, his steps abruptly stop in the middle of the dirt path. A memory from the past pops into his head, recalling advice that when you have someone to protect, you should never hesitate. The memory's voice said that the moment he felt the instinct to protect, he had to act right away. Snapping back to the present, our guy turns around and stares at the two without saying a word. Walking toward them, he approaches with a clear goal to fix the problem. Watching the young man get close, the little girl backs up, letting out a sound of pure terror. Juin kneels down near them, warning that he will hold them for a second and asking them not to panic. However, without understanding a word, the woman goes into shock, frozen in place as he approaches. Our guy reaches out while speaking his language, which sounds like an intimidating alien tongue to them. Hugging her mother, the girl screams in fear, believing the worst is about to happen. Seeing the two curled up in fear just from his approach, he realizes he should not even keep a stern face around them. Very gently, he asks for permission for a second as he moves toward the family. With a swift move, he grabs little Lizzie by the waist, lifting the child off the ground. Right after, he scoops the woman up close, leaving her completely stunned by the move. Juin adjusts his grip, perfectly settling his partner and stepdaughter in his arms. Now standing tall, he carries all the weight on his back along with the two of them without showing any strain. The little girl is completely disoriented, not understanding why she is being carried like that. Meanwhile, the woman peeks over his shoulder, amazed to see the ground fading away so fast. Starting his trek, our guide just asks them to hold on tight. Running toward the mountain peak, he is surprised by how light the two are, considering they weigh so little even with all the luggage. Focused, Juin vows to himself he will master the language and hunting reel soon so he can feed them plenty of meat. Looking at the trail ahead, he warns that it is going to take a lot of effort from here on out. Realizing he only wanted to help with the climb, the woman finally relaxes and rests her head on his chest. Reaching the destination, Juin tightens his grip on the pack strap and finally stops running. Carefully, he sets the woman back on the ground, making sure she is safe. Led by an older villager, they finish their path in the middle of the woods. Standing still in front of a rundown cabin, our guy thanks the old man for guiding them. The guide turns around and takes off, leaving our guy staring at their new home. Looking at the completely decayed wooden cabin, he says this is where they will live, guessing it will be even colder than his old rooftop room. Anticipating the winter misery, he shivers uncomfortably, remembering how much he hates the cold. Without delay, our guy pushes open the rough wooden door to inspect the inside. As he fixes his eyes on the dark interior, he lets out a gasp of shock. Rushing past him, the woman enters the house completely terrified by the state of the place. Our guy cannot understand why she is distressed and asks why she is crying. Ignoring the question, the woman runs toward the back of the room. Juwon turns his face, trying to see what got her so upset. Standing frozen in the middle of the room lit only by the doorway light, he looks around completely lost. Looking at the empty place, he realizes that while she was in the village, people looted everything in the house, from shelves and tables to basic utensils. Slumped on his back on the dirt floor outside, he reflects that without tools he cannot repair the house, and worse, he has no way to protect them if a beast shows up. Walking through the grass, the woman finds him chilling outside. As soon as she approaches and sits on the grass, our guy stands up in front of her. With a super affectionate gesture, he reaches out and places his hand on his partner's head. He gently pats her hair while the woman holds back her tears with her head down. Watching her closely, Juwon asks her not to worry, making her wonder if he is actually trying to comfort her. Face covered in tears, she looks up at that gentle giant, knowing this is the man she will have to rely on from now on. In her mind, she assesses the obstacles, aware they do not share the same language and that he has zero hunting experience. Overwhelmed by doubt, the woman wonders if they will actually be able to survive together in such a harsh world. However, our MC's calm and loving demeanor projects an unexplainable sense of peace. Maintaining his tenderness, he promises to protect her from anything, wiping away all the anxiety consuming her heart. Illuminated by the sunlight, the two remain connected by that simple gesture of comfort. Surprised by the promise, she feels a massive burden lift off after sensing his reassuring tone. Sitting on the forest floor, the distance between them seems to have finally closed. Crying softly, she wonders why she suddenly feels so comforted next to this guy. Kneeling before his partner, Juwon recalls that back in his original world he lived alone ever since his parents passed away. Holding her hand tightly, our guy thinks that despite facing everything, he always fought and endured to stay alive. With deep affection, he pulls the woman into a warm hug, realizing that now that he has a family, there is zero reason to give up. Confidently touching his own chest, our guy assures her she does not need to worry, as he will do whatever it takes to provide for them. Settled on the grass, the woman wipes her tears and finally starts to calm down after seeing her husband's drive. Suddenly, a loud rumble comes from our guy's stomach, shattering the emotional atmosphere and taking them both by surprise. Right at that second, little Lizzie comes sprinting out of the woods in terror, screaming in her native tongue. The girl throws herself in front of her mother, spreading her arms like a shield and begging him not to hurt them. Seeing the kid trying to protect her mother, Juwon stays seated, processing the girl's brave stance. Looking at his wife, he contemplates having a woman crying in his arms so genuinely. Then he shifts his gaze to the tearful little girl, admitting to himself that this whole scenario is totally brand new. Several doubts flood his mind regarding where the kid came from and why the woman gave him bread in captivity. With a gentle touch, he wipes the tears from her face, trying to organize all these messy thoughts. Juwon realizes that if they keep living together and putting in the work, they can definitely build a great home. With a caring gesture, he wraps his arms around both of them at once, swearing to become an awesome husband and father so they never suffer again. Embracing his new family near the lake, our guy promises himself they will never regret being around him. As late afternoon arrives, the sun begins to set, illuminating the old wooden cabin where they will live. Inside the house, the three sit on the simple floor, keeping a bit of distance in a somewhat hesitant mood. Juwon crosses his legs annoyed, noticing the intimate vibe vanished and they are back to square one. Observing the focused expressions of the two, he is thankful that at least the fear is gone, but he does not know how to break the ice. Suddenly, our guy raises his finger as a simple idea strikes him to start communicating. With a quick movement, he scoots across the wooden floor, getting a bit closer to his partner and stepdaughter. Pointing at his own chest with a friendly face, he says his full name clearly out loud. Our guy repeats the sound super slowly, knowing they need to at least know what to call each other sharing the same house. The woman catches on quickly and whispers his name slowly, making our guy super happy. Capitalizing on the moment, he reaches out toward his wife, asking what her name is. A bit lost by the request, she just places her hand on her own chest, not sure how to answer. Shortly, the woman shifts her hand, pointing at the girl and pronouncing the little one's name out loud. Juin nods approvingly, praising the choice while pointing at the girl enthusiastically. Next, he points back at his partner, insisting on finding out her name, which makes her super anxious. The wife shakes her head no, backing away to show she does not know how to react to that question about her own name. Noticing the downcast expression on the little blonde girl, Juin finally realizes that the girl was never given a proper name either. Our guy goes silent for a moment, feeling a sting in his heart as he processes the orphan's situation. Very gently, he touches the girl's forehead and tells her he will pick a beautiful name for her. With an affectionate tone, our guy decides to name the child Dorothy. In his mind appears the famous fairy tale character who travels through a magical universe, making loyal companions. Wishing the best for the girl, he figures that with this name she will grow up charming and find her own happiness. The little girl stammers the word with effort, while Juin wishes for her to be surrounded by loved ones in the future. Showing a bright smile, the child clearly speaks her new name, accepting the gift with pure joy. The next day, our MC wakes up fully locked into work and starts chopping firewood outside the house. Hiding behind a tree, the woman watches her husband split wood, finding the man's behavior super peculiar. As he shatters a block of wood with a single swing, she thinks that even though he is way bigger than her violent ex, he has only treated her with immense gentleness so far. Clinging to the tree trunk, the wife concludes with relief that this guy has zero connection to the cruel figures from her past. Remembering the soft way he introduced himself, she notices that even without knowing the language, his voice sounds super polite and kind. Dark memories of her abusive ex resurface, making the woman realize she had never received this much warmth in her life. Our guy wipes the sweat off his face with a friendly look, leaving his wife confused about why he is so unconditionally good. From the woods, she checks out our guy's impressive build, convinced a guy like him does not belong in this remote wilderness. Spotting his wife nearby, Juin waves excitedly, calling her over. Looking closely at her husband, the wife focuses on his features, remembering something important. An old kingdom rumor pops into her head about a rival nation that managed to bring a legendary warrior to the battlefield. Legend had it this epic hero had pitch-black hair and eyes. Gradually, our guy calmly approaches her hiding spot through the tall grass. Looking at his face, she starts to think the features from the legend match our guy pretty closely. However, the wife quickly dismisses the absurd thought, knowing someone that epic would live in a castle, not a crumbling cabin on a mountain. Taking a step back, she convinces herself that those summoning tales are just people's fairy tales. Our guy finally stops right in front of her, leaning down to maintain direct eye contact. Up close, the woman notices her husband's hair and eyes are actually brown, not pitch black. Feeling sudden relief, she is thankful he is just a normal guy who is slightly larger than average. Hand on her chest, the young woman wonders why she feels so relieved about this when they barely know each other. A bit embarrassed by her own thoughts, she quickly turns her face away, leaving our guy completely clueless about her reaction. Ignoring her weird reaction, Juin simply places his hand on his wife's head in a super sweet gesture. That random display of affection leaves the woman completely frozen, having never experienced anything like it before. Feeling his touch, she thinks about how in the past, the only reason a guy raised a hand to her was to hurt her. But our guy just gently pats her hair with unbelievable softness. Slowly closing her eyes, the wife soaks in that cozy feeling, wishing it would never end. Overwhelmed by the moment, the young woman inwardly wishes her husband would keep patting her head forever. The mood between them starts heating up, and our guy's face gets a light shade of red from shy nervousness. Looking at our guy with a loving glance, the woman lets herself get swept away by the romantic forest vibe. Their bodies naturally move closer, closing whatever gap was left between them. With their faces inches apart, the two lean in for a passionate kiss. Suddenly, Juin opens his eyes wide as he realizes what he was about to do. The reality of the situation hits the woman, who freezes like a block of ice from extreme embarrassment. Completely awkward about his own impulse, our guy backs off fast, rubbing his face to hide the awkwardness. To escape the cringy situation, he instantly turns his back and focuses on work, trying to pretend nothing happened. Gripping the handle of the wooden bucket tightly, our guy changes the subject, focusing on finishing his mountain chores. To dodge that awkward moment, he hurries off with the bucket in hand, leaving his partner behind. The woman stays frozen, face bright red and heart pounding after the sudden moment. Rushing down the forest path, Juin calls himself an idiot, wondering what she must be thinking of him right now. Upset, he rests his hand on his head, remembering that even though they are married, they literally just met that exact day. Our guy thinks about how they cannot even communicate properly and wonders if he should just act like nothing happened. Suddenly, his footsteps come to a halt in the middle of the path. Looking at the dark woods around him, our guy wonders how far he ran off and where he ended up. The forest vibe gets increasingly dense and creepy, with strong winds howling through the trees. Without delay, he decides to grab the water as fast as possible and head straight back home. Right at that moment, a sudden noise gives our guy a major jump scare. Emerging from the darkness, a colossal wolf with glowing red eyes appears, staring dead at our guy. The beast steps closer, bearing its fangs, radiating a dangerous aura. Juin freezes in terror as the beast lets out a heavy growl right in front of him. Staring at that giant monster, he can barely believe this is supposed to be just a wolf. Terrified, our guy backs up and ends up falling to his knees on the dirt, totally defenseless against the beast. With a fast move, he reaches out and snatches a thick branch lying on the ground. The monster lunges forward to attack, forcing our guy to use the stick to defend himself. The animal bites down on the stick with insane force, coming inches away from our guy's face. Panicking, Juin screams while pushing with crazy strength to hold off the beast's advance. However, the wood snaps under the pressure, leaving our guy wide open. Unable to block, he gets violently tackled by the wolf, cursing his luck as he gets pinned to the ground. Fighting for his life, our guy warns that there is zero chance he is going to accept kicking the bucket in a place like this. Locking in, he throws a punch with all his strength straight into the animal's face. However, the monster strikes back viciously, inflicting intense pain on our guy. Juin screams in agony, feeling like his entire body is catching fire. Suddenly, a strange glow appears and frightens the animal. Intense fire explodes right in the middle of the fight, blasting the beast away instantly. Mystic flames burst directly from our guy's arm, lighting up everything around. Scared off by the intense heat, the wolf backs away terrified, dropping the young man. The beast staggers back, severely injured by the fiery explosion. The flames engulf the wolf completely, securing our guy's victory in an instant. The monster collapses dead on the dirt, its carcass completely charred. Lying in the grass breathing heavily, our guy tries to make sense of what just went down, remembering seeing his own arm catch fire. He checks out his limb carefully, finding it weird that there are no burn marks on his clothes. Still stunned, our guy reaches the conclusion that he actually just used magic. Right then, he remembers fantasy tropes, where people get transported to another world and gain abilities. Our guy comments that this is a super common trope in stories. Staring closely at his own hand, he starts coming to grips with the fact that this is his new reality. Hyped up, he points to the sky and shouts the name of a fireball spell. Since nothing happens, Juin shouts the command multiple times, hoping to trigger the ability again. Lying in the grass, he tries shouting other high-tier spell names, trying out any option. Our guy keeps testing out cool incantations near the defeated wolf, but keeps failing. With an annoyed look, he stands up and confirms it was not an illusion, since his combat injuries are already almost healed. Thrilled by the realization, he gets that if he controls this power, he can easily sustain his new family by hunting monsters. Our guy smiles, planning a future where he can provide a cozy home and tons of food for his wife and little Dorothy. Thinking about this, he also realizes magic will be essential to heal them, given there are no doctors in this remote village. Standing tall, our guy takes a deep breath and resolves to take things easy. A painful memory surfaces in his mind, remembering how his grandfather took him in after his parents passed away, only to expire shortly after in a simple accident. Back then, his toxic relatives placed all the blame for the tragedy squarely on the kid's shoulders. One of the relatives treated him with hostility, stating that living with him brought bad luck to the house. Just an elementary school student at the time, Juin listened quietly to claims that he was the reason for all the tragedies. Remembering being seen as a jinx brings a bad taste to his mouth, but he quickly shakes off those thoughts of the past. Snapping back to the present, our guy picks up the massive wolf and decides to skin the beast later, fearing he might attract other monsters. Lugging the heavy carcass on his back, he starts the trek back home. Our guy tells himself that watching his granddad clean poultry back in the day will finally have a practical use. Walking under the moonlight, he gives a subtle smile, imagining the old man would be super proud seeing him like this. Despite the win, our guy remains clueless on how he will practice using this newly discovered magic. Far away from there, the mood inside the old cabin is super cozy with the warm glow of the lit fireplace. The woman and little Dorothy prepare dinner together, carefully setting up the wooden bowls. With a sweet smile, the wife expresses gratitude for the child's help. With a loving gesture, she pats the kid's blonde hair and Dorothy reacts with huge excitement. The girl happily runs around the room, bringing a splash of energy to that neglected place. Playing near the wall, the little girl peeks through the crack in the wooden door. Suddenly, the girl notices something weird outside in the pitch darkness. Terrified, Dorothy lets out a loud scream as she sees the head of a massive beast appear at the entrance. Terror grips the woman as she hears the girl's panic-stricken scream. Driven purely by motherly instinct, the wife grabs a knife from the table to protect her daughter. She rushes toward the door, telling the girl to step back from the impending threat. However, taking a closer look at the danger, the woman sees something that leaves her completely shocked. Out of breath, Juin appears at the doorway lugging the giant dead beast, totally unaware of why everyone was screaming. Still in the dark, the wife screams in distress, thinking her husband is under attack by the wolf. Surprised by their reaction, our guy immediately drops the bulky carcass onto the floor. Trying to calm the situation down, he calls out his wife and the girls' names, reassuring them it is just him. The partner freezes with the knife in hand, finally understanding the animal is already dead and being hauled. With a massive wave of relief washing over her chest, she lets the weapon drop onto the grass, losing all her strength after the panic. Leaning heavily against Juin's arms, the wife cries intensely while accepting her husband's embrace. Dorothy watches the scene up close, touching our guy's jacket with shaking hands. Juin tenderly reveals he only took a minor bite on his arm and that everything is completely fine. Settled on the forest floor next to the giant dead wolf, our guy works on comforting the family. The wife hugs his chest even tighter, showing massive comfort in finding him whole and safe. Stroking his partner's back, our guy reassures her he is okay and asks her to stop crying. Dorothy snuggles up close to them, softly stating her heart was pounding like crazy too. Walking back home together under the moonlight, Juin carries the beast's body while comforting his family. Flying freely in the night sky, a crow tracks their movement from above. Reaching the house, Juin quickly sets up a work table outside to start processing the beast. With a sharp knife in hand, he begins the task of prepping the meat with extreme focus. Pausing for a second to catch his breath, our guy complains that his granddad's butcher work looked way simpler than it actually is. Wiping the sweat off his forehead, Juin figures that next time he will try a different technique to speed things up. Taking a deep breath and locking into the task, he resolves to give it his all to wrap up the job quickly. Watching through the cabin window, the wife keeps an eye on her husband working diligently outside. Surprised at not seeing the little girl nearby, Juin calls out Dorothy's name. Following our guy, the wife walks over hurriedly carrying a wooden bucket in her arms. Pointing at the container, she requests that her husband store the meat inside it. While the woman happily gestures trying to help, our guy ponders if that was actually what she meant to express. Rubbing his chin, Juin tries to recall the correct word to say thank you in that weird local dialect. Hesitating a bit, our guy finally manages to utter a thank you in a slightly clumsy way. The wife opens her eyes slightly wide, completely stunned by her husband's effort. Not understanding her reaction, our guy wonders if he accidentally said something silly. Pointing at herself with a warm smile on her face, the woman repeats the word thank you. Our guy looks at his partner, stepping a bit closer while saying the word. Looking at their feet on the grass, the vibe between them turns super comfortable. With a loving smile, the wife repeats her gratitude while looking into his eyes. Juin shows a friendly smile, protesting that she does not need to thank him. Reflecting on his inner thoughts, our guy considers that he had never heard a thank you even from his own parents or siblings. With a warm heart, he realizes that alongside this person, he is experiencing many things for the absolute first time. With her face completely blushing, the wife feels her heart racing fast and thinks about the kiss that almost happened earlier. Turning her back, she quickly runs back inside the house to hide her embarrassment. Thinking to herself, the young woman confesses this is the first time she has ever dealt with this and wonders if he had done the same with other women. Feeling a tight chest, she reveals her heart is beating so fast it is almost making her shed tears. Back turned to his partner, Juin keeps organizing the containers near the wooden table. Helping out with the chores, the wife thinks it is pretty peculiar that she herself is taking the first step to get close like that. Our guy turns around suddenly holding a bowl, making his partner wonder why he acts with so much spontaneity. The two lock eyes in absolute silence for a moment. Panicking on the inside, she thinks he is about to do something and almost loses control from the tension. Squeezing her eyes shut tightly, the young woman waits motionless for whatever comes next. Their faces slowly draw closer amidst the tension of that moment. Their lips meet in a quick, surprising kiss. Scared by her own reaction, she pulls back red-faced, complaining to our guy for closing his eyes. Juin stands frozen holding the bucket, not really knowing how to react to his wife's sudden outburst. Hiding away with her hands on her head, she panics, assuming she came off as super desperate for a kiss. Stunned, Juin turns his head, looking at his wife up close. Resolved not to make the same mistake, she opens her eyes wide to avoid any confusion. The two kiss again passionately, leaving the young woman totally mesmerized. Slowly pulling apart, the couple shares a super bashful look. Suddenly hearing a noise, Juin turns around carrying a bucket and calls out Dorothy's name. Watching hidden from behind the door, little Dorothy is shocked as she catches the couple kissing. Dying of embarrassment over the situation, the wife sprints back inside the house. Walking down the forest trail, the new family heads toward the river. The group walks through the trees in total sync. Carrying the bucket, Juin smiles as he gets a sweet thank you from the little girl. Stopping in her tracks, little Dorothy tugs on the hem of his pants, looking sad about something. Confused by the child's behavior, our guy tries to figure out why, guessing he made a mistake by not calling her by name earlier. Kneeling down affectionately, Juin expresses his thanks for the girl's help directly. With a bright smile on her face, Dorothy excitedly celebrates helping carry the container. Inside the house, the wife works on prepping the wolf skin, while Juin thinks about the strong odor of the beast in the room. Juin opens his eyes wide as he thinks of a way to make better use of the material. He reflects that the wolf's fur will be super valuable and important material for Dorothy. The wife and the girl evaluate the dark fur spread out on the house floor. Intrigued, little Dorothy touches the beast's paw with huge excitement. Smiling happily, the girl celebrates the discovery alongside her mother. Watching the two from afar, Juin notices they seem to be enjoying themselves a lot. The view outside the wooden cabin shows a calm day on the mountain. The wife's skillful hands carefully arrange the cuts of meat inside the containers. Juin watches everything closely, thinking he needs to learn how to do that himself next time. The woman smiles happily with her work, glad to have saved the fat to use later. Thoughtful, our guy notes he still has a lot of important things to discover in this universe. He ponders how goods, business, and prices work in this region. Determined to turn his life around, Juin stands up from the floor, stating he needs to get back to work. Startled by his move, the wife immediately turns toward her husband. Asking if she prefers him to stay seated, our guy calmly approaches his partner. Assuring her he will not overdo it at work, Juin nods, asking his wife not to worry. Right after, he taps his own shoulder, stating he has rested enough and feels zero pain. As her husband walks away with the gear, the woman watches him leave in silence. Deep in the woods, our guy evaluates the surrounding trees and figures their size is ideal for practicing strikes. Gripping the axe firmly, he admits he cannot tell different types of firewood apart, but fully trusts his physical capabilities. Without delay, our MC builds up momentum and delivers a heavy swing against the tree trunk. The sharp blade hits the tree hard, sinking deep into the wood. Due to the heavy blow, the massive tree begins to fall rapidly through the woods. Taken back by the fast fall, Juin backs away quickly to avoid getting crushed by the tree. Far from there, the old cabin remains peaceful under the daylight. Pushing the wooden door open, our guy finally returns home carrying a heavy basket on his back. As soon as he steps inside, the wife and little Dorothy turn around instantly to welcome him. Totally exhausted, our guy lets the weight drop to the floor, relieved to have completed the mission. He sits on the floor completely drained of energy as the woman rushes over. Holding her husband's calloused hands, she shows concern, but he quickly tries to calm her down, assuring her everything is fine. Noticing his wife's care, Juin thanks her softly while Dorothy pops up in the background. The girl runs around excitedly in the house, carrying something in her hands. Stopping near a basin, she carefully dips a cloth into clean water. Immediately after, the girl runs back toward the couple. Handing the wet cloth to our guy, the kid's cute gesture leaves him completely stunned. A bit lost by the surprising move, our guy lets out a sound, not quite understanding. At that moment, the wife touches his shoulder, proudly pointing out her daughter's kind action. The child stays standing right there in front of them, eagerly waiting for a response. Heart full of love, Juin pats Dorothy on the head and expresses his thanks for the help. Watching the woman run around non-stop cleaning things up, he frantically begs her to rest for a moment. Sitting there enjoying that moment with his family, our guy admits the situation feels like a dream. Showing a beaming smile next to his wife, he declares that just a few days ago, he would never have imagined experiencing such massive joy. Outside, night begins to fall over the distant woods. Smoke rises from the chimney, indicating a warm and comfortable environment inside the home. Gathered around a small wooden table, the three share the meal in an atmosphere of total tranquility. Throughout dinner, the couple enjoys the simple food in a very calm setting. Super tired from the hectic routine, Dorothy ends up falling asleep right there at the table. The wife quickly notices the situation and points at the sleeping girl with a gentle smile. With extreme care, our guy picks up the girl in his arms so as not to wake her up. As he stands holding the child, the woman also gets ready to clean up the mess. Walking quietly through the house, Juin carries the girl toward the bed. He tucks Dorothy into the blankets as gently as possible to guarantee her a good sleep. Through the window, the darkness of the woods contrasts with the dim light inside the house. Focused on her tasks, the wife begins washing the dinner dishes near the window. Right then, our guy approaches silently from behind her, wanting to help out. In an unexpected move, he grabs his partner's hand super gently. Caught completely off guard by the touch, she turns her head with a heavily blushing face. Our guy just stares at her silently, giving off a feeling of absolute comfort. The two stay frozen close together, surrounded by a romantic vibe under the moonlight. Giving into the moment, Juin pulls his wife into a tight hug. Taking charge, our guy begins unbuttoning his shirt. Dying of embarrassment, the woman tries to convince herself she should not feel ashamed, given this is normal behavior for a married woman. Shortly after, Juin finishes taking off the garment, showing off his toned physique. He stays frozen in front of her, waiting while his partner hesitates nervously. Noticing the young woman's anxiety, he displays a warm smile to put her at ease. However, embarrassment takes over her and she shrinks back, battling her own nervousness. Without forcing anything, our guy simply holds her hands with deep affection. Pulling his wife close, he keeps her safe in a firm and gentle embrace. Breaking the silence, he wipes away all the tension and simply suggests they go rest. Outside, the night wind sways the trees around the quiet house. Lying side by side on the hard wooden floor, the woman stays completely stiff next to him. Our guy quickly pulls up the thick blanket to shelter them both from the night chill. Settling into the makeshift bed, the wife watches her husband get comfortable to sleep. Feeling huge comfort from his respectful stance, she shows a genuine blushing smile. Eyes closed, Juin finally gives into exhaustion and falls heavily asleep. Snuggled against her husband's chest, the young woman enjoys the warm touch of the embrace as she drifts off. On the other side, little Dorothy also rests super peacefully in her bed. In our guy's mind, a memory of that mysterious Santa resurfaces, as he inwardly begs that no one ever takes this joy from him and that the two live a long life. In the wife's thoughts, she reflects that rich aristocrats would never understand the lack of privacy, since they live surrounded by servants in massive rooms. The lives of simple families had always been completely different, with all the kids growing up in the exact same room as their parents. Because of this, she remembers that kids end up realizing super fast how couples spend their nights. A dark memory from her youth resurfaces, bringing back her father's terrifying voice promising to hit her if she cried, something that always terrified her. Hidden under the blankets as a kid, she spent her nights listening to her mother's muffled crying after her husband's violence. That cycle of trauma caused the woman to grow up with constant fear on the inside. Watching her husband sleep, she admits she always feared her mother's painful crying would become her own fate. With those thoughts, the young woman closes her eyes, experiencing a peace she had never felt before. The next morning, the sound of crackling firewood in the fireplace breaks the quiet of the room. Waking up disoriented, she realizes they are in the spacious bed, having no clue how she got off the floor during the night. Opening her eyes completely, the wife realizes with emotion that her husband offered his own arm as a pillow for her. Snuggled safely and cozy next to our guy, the two rest peacefully, finally forming a real family. Huddled in her husband's arms, the woman takes a deep breath, feeling immense comfort that the night was so gentle and calm. Looking at his peaceful face, she concludes that her whole world started transforming the exact second she found him. At that moment, our guy mutters softly, threatening to wake up, leaving his partner on high alert. However, our guy just pulls her into an even tighter hug without even opening his eyes. Feeling the warmth of that direct touch, her face burns with embarrassment, and she vows her heart will burst any second. Overwhelmed by a tingling feeling in her chest, the young woman silently prays that this enchanting moment never ends. As the first rays of sunlight enter the house, Juin finally wakes up from his heavy sleep. Our guy slowly gets up from the makeshift bed, taking care to cover his wife and stepdaughter to protect them from the cold. In a super sweet move, he pats little Dorothy's hair, who just mutters in her sleep calmly. Now on his feet, he is surprised when his partner enters the room carrying a bucket of water. Juin gets a jump scare from her sudden arrival first thing in the morning. He turns around awkward to face her while she stands still, waiting for some reaction. Without delay, our guy splashes tons of water on his face to try to wake up completely and shake off the sleepiness. With a clearer head, our guy greets his wife in his native tongue with plenty of warmth. The young woman tilts her head, not understanding a word he said. Trying to be nice, our guy asks if she slept well, but quickly notices his partner's face is bright red. She nods super slowly, making our guy wonder if the awkwardness was because of the way he addressed her. Thinking about it, Juin deduces the term must mean something like honey, sweetheart, or wife in her language. Frustrated by the language barrier, he holds out his arms, desperately wishing to know how to properly address her. Overcoming her shyness, the woman stammers and tries to say the word darling in his language, asking to be called that way. Finding the moment adorable, he speaks the word out loud, making his wife hide her face in total shyness. The young woman turns her back instantly, unable to handle her own shyness so early in the morning. Watching her tension, our guy admits to himself that the urge to tease her is only growing. In a super calm tone, he calls her darling again and asks her to look at him, making his partner jump in surprise. The fun ends when little Dorothy wakes up in the makeshift bed, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Still half asleep, the girl sits up grumbling about meat with a super hungry look on her face. In an instant, the child leaps off the bed and sprints frantically through the room. Juin tries to catch Dorothy's attention, but she gives zero care about her adoptive parents. The blonde kid zooms past the couple with a look of absolute determination. Standing frozen in front of the containers, the child is thrilled to see the stored cuts of food. Clinging to the wooden bucket, Dorothy kicks her legs in happiness, bringing joy to both Juin and his wife. The girl starts cheering about the food out loud, while our guy watches the situation amused. The hype is so real that the girl almost dives headfirst into the container. Laughing at the situation, our guy declares he will give his all in hunting to guarantee his family's happiness. Already walking through the dense woods, he reassures himself he is ready in case another giant wolf shows up looking for a fight. Resting his axe on his shoulder, our guy oozes confidence, stating that this time he brought a super reliable weapon. His steps continue firm through the brush, penetrating deeper into the heart of the mountain. Suddenly, he stops walking as he notices the surrounding scenery altered drastically. Our guy checks out his surroundings suspiciously, finding the heavy aura that took over the region super weird. Gripping the handle of the axe tightly, he admits to feeling suffocated even in the middle of a massive forest. With a super serious expression, our guy wonders what kind of terrifying creature is about to cross his path. He plants his feet on the ground, ready for whatever comes out of the dark woods. However, our guy relaxes his stance as he notices a figure slowly approaching. Walking down the same path, a man wearing a dark cloak emerges from the shadows. The stranger turns out to be an old man with a super stern and observant face. Looking at the mysterious old man, Juin is confused about who this guy isolated in the woods could be. The old man checks out the space around, noticing the remnants of the battle that went down there the previous night. Evaluating the deep marks in the dirt, he concludes that the beast killed was indeed massive and threatening. In his mind, the old man recalls spying on our guy chopping wood, and realizing he did not even know how to hold an axe properly. Finding the situation super fishy, he can barely believe a beginner defeated a beast like that solo, even suspecting the presence of a partner. Shaking his head, the old man asserts it is impossible, given that even a master hunter would struggle to defeat that beast without a proper weapon. Curious, the hooded man resumes his walk toward our guy. Resolved to solve this mystery, he chooses to clear up the situation right there on the spot. The old man closes the distance, taking slow steps until he stops right in front of our guy. With a sharp and evaluating gaze, he inspects Juin from head to toe, searching for an explanation. The old man's focus immediately shifts to the visible wound on our guy's arm. Checking the injury closely, he realizes the pattern is from a wolf bite, but finds it weird that the wound is so well taken care of with zero signs of infection. Evaluating the damage the fangs should have caused, the old man knows the muscles and blood vessels should be wrecked, preventing the guy from moving. The only logical explanation pops into his head, leading him to suspect that this massive man might be a rare magic wielder. The old man recalls that in this world, there are individuals capable of casting incredible spells. For the common folks of this land, crossing paths with one of these mages was practically unheard of. Looking at Juin carefully, the old man concludes that if our guy is indeed one of those rare mystic warriors, the tables have turned in his favor. The hooded man secretly celebrates the arrival of his long-awaited chance to turn the game around. Standing still in the middle of the path, he cheers for finally seeing an opportunity for revenge knock on his door before his time is up. Sensing the weird vibe coming from the man, Juin keeps his guard up, wondering who this dude is. In the old man's memories, he laments being just a broken old man today, remembering when he was a young guy full of energy and drive. Back then, the path to success involved working in an aristocrat's forest, getting recruited for battles, and excelling to gain prestige. Chasing success, he left his father's safety and set off as a solo hunter to try his luck as a woodcutter. His hard work paid off quickly, earning him the position of licensed woodcutter in a forest overflowing with natural resources. However, the catch was the intense competition for firewood, since any regular peasant had access to the borders of that noble forest. To secure his survival, the young hunter was forced to venture into the deepest and most distant regions of the mountain. Trekking through the rocks, he thought he was gaining valuable field experience, unaware of the real reason locals fled that spot. The Lord's rules were strict and harsh, requiring that the prospective forest guard be in perfect health and unharmed at the time of the deal. However, all his greed crumbled in a single moment when he was ambushed and severely injured on the mountain, losing his spot. Slumped on the dirt floor in sheer panic, the hunter realized too late the beastly threat that inhabited that restricted region. In the old man's memories, the mountain was overrun by terrifying beasts called goblins. Back then, the young hunter ended up trapped in the dark by those creatures. Those monsters had a habit of kidnapping human women from the area to force them to expand their numbers. With the village already suffering from a shortage of people, he tried to fight back, but ended up collapsing on the ground completely helpless. Unable to defend himself, the young man was brutally attacked by the monsters, wasting his chance at a bright future right then and there. Returning to the present, the old man reflects that he endured a miserable life focused solely on the day he would finally get his revenge. Even holding a grudge against the villagers, he lived among them for years with the sole purpose of wiping out the ones who stole everything he had. Walking through the woods, the old man admits he endured bravely all this time just to destroy the creature's lair once and for all. Standing face to face with Juin, he is convinced he finally found the guy with the required strength for the job. Checking out our guy, he notices he has a much more advanced build than the locals and a stamina resembling a giant's. Furthermore, he spots our guy's arm and is amazed by his incredible regeneration speed after the monster attack. The hooded man concludes the rookie has the potential to become the most powerful fighter he has ever seen in his life. Aware that the monsters are hiding in the depths, he knows they will soon run out of supplies and raid the village again. With that in mind, he decides that until that day comes, he will train our guy relentlessly to turn him into a top-tier hunter. The old man plans to hide the existence of the lair until he can seal a deal, making sure our guy cannot back out later. Not understanding the man's motives, Juin gives a polite greeting, speaking in his own language. The veteran hunter quickly notices that even while greeting, our guy keeps his center of gravity back, never lowering his guard. Ignoring the suspicion, the hooded guy taps our guy's shoulder, warning that from that moment on, he will pass down all his knowledge. Juin is confused by the sudden move, while the old man swears he will transform him into a grand hunter. The next morning, inside the old cabin, our guy gets ready to leave, complaining that the night flew by. Our guy steps through the wooden door, ready to kick off his new workday on the mountain. The old man waits outside, noticing the young man took care not to invite him inside his home. Juin reflects that he does not want to make a habit of letting strangers into the space where his wife and little Dorothy stay. Noticing the rookie's defensive posture regarding his home, the old man catches the drift real fast. The older hunter finds the young man's protective attitude interesting, confirming he actually has great intuition. Juin analyzes the old man's demeanor, remembering back when he worked corporate and had to deal with bosses demanding fake friendliness. Adjusting his gear on his back, our guy accepts that if the dude is willing to teach him how to hunt, the smart move is to apply himself and absorb everything quickly. Right at that second, Lizzie approaches, handing over a carefully wrapped meal for her husband's journey. Watching his partner's dedication, he deeply appreciates her sacrifice, waking up early just to make that food so clumsily. Completely charmed, our guy gets a bit shy and admits to himself how adorable he finds his wife. Watching from inside the house, little Dorothy follows the couple's interaction on the cabin porch. Without hesitating, the child sprints out fast toward the porch. The girl runs over and bumps against her adoptive father's legs, catching his attention. Dorothy approaches full of joy to take part in the send-off, brightening up our guy's morning. Lizzie helps adjust the pack on her husband's back, making hand signs asking him to eat well throughout the day. Our guy turns his head satisfied, feeling his heart warm up to finally have a family that cares for him with so much love. The wife waves from a distance, wishing him a safe trip with great enthusiasm. Juin tries to repeat her words in the local tongue, putting in work to master the language as fast as possible. Looking at Lizzie's sweet face, he promises he will focus on work and return home quickly. Seeking attention, Dorothy tries hard to reach our guy before he leaves for the woods for good. The girl raises her arms and also shouts, wishing him a peaceful workday. Our guy waves back super happily, promising the girl he won't be long. Turning his back to continue his path alongside the old man, he feels a bit bummed, confessing he has zero desire to leave the house. Facing the path ahead, Juin feels massive peace taking over his mind. Walking toward his lessons, he figures it will be tough to focus on the mountain when his new wife and daughter are so darn cute. Deep in the dense woods, our guy follows the old man, wondering how long they have been walking aimlessly. Annoyed by the silence, he tries to understand what the dude intends to show by walking so deep into the mountain. Juin narrows his gaze, focusing on the hunter's feet, suspecting the secret to the training must be right there. The old man keeps navigating through the foliage with precise, calculated steps. Watching the movement, our guy gets curious, noticing something super unusual in how the man walks. Suddenly, the old man stops walking and points to the ground, speaking in his mysterious tongue. The veteran hunter steps lightly on the ground, demonstrating the skill in action. Checking out the tracks left behind, our guy notices the prints are super subtle and completely different from normal. He comes to the conclusion that the dude is using some high-level skill to avoid making noise or leaving tracks in the woods. Determined to master the technique, Juin realizes he needs to lock in and mimic every movement to improve. Without delay, the rookie starts copying the stepping style, trying to distribute his weight more efficiently. Our guy starts walking with way more focus, locking into this new stealth lesson. Noticing the young man's dedication and quick grasp, the veteran hunter gets super pleased with the progress. The journey continues down increasingly dense paths, with the mentor starting to reveal the secrets of that land. Stopping near a giant tree, the old man instructs the apprentice to touch the bark to learn that every region has its own unique tree species. Right after, the mentor has Juin trace land features in the dirt to help him memorize the trails. After hours of intense dedication, the two finally stop in a rocky area to take a break from the harsh sun. The old man reaches for his supply bag, getting ready for the anticipated break. Watching the move, our guy notices it is finally time for lunch. Super tired and hungry, he celebrates the break, getting comfortable on a rock. Juin opens his meal with massive hype, eager to try the food made by his wife. Looking at the meal crafted with so much care, his stomach practically growls for food. Our guy praises the delicious smell of the lunch, eyes glued to the dish. However, the hunter frantically waves his hand, ordering him to cover it up immediately. The old man scolds the careless move, making our guy realize the actual danger. Juin realizes that in the woods, that delicious aroma travels super fast, capable of attracting predators in a matter of seconds. Stashing the food without taking a bite, he gets bummed out that Lizzie's morning effort went to waste, and that this will likely be the last time she cooks something like this. Totally deflated, our guy feels like shedding tears, while the mentor gives him a comforting pat on the shoulder. After the break, the two walk to a simple, isolated wooden cabin that serves as a camp for the hunter. Standing in front of the cabin, the old man holds an item, and the rookie quickly notices the design of that bow is super weird. Inspecting the strange bow in hand, Juin reflects that the only structures he knows are curved like the letters D or C. Holding the weird weapon, he wonders how anyone could possibly shoot using an item shaped like that. The old hunter simply passes the bow to our guy, telling him to hold it and follow him through the woods. Walking right behind the mentor, our guy asks himself if handling that object is actually feasible. Evaluating the dimensions of the object, he concludes it would take insane strength to draw such a giant bow. The old man takes his stance, pulling back the heavy string with mind-blowing ease. Locked onto the target, the master proves that even pulling a colossal draw weight, his posture does not budge an inch. The arrow is launched, slicing through the mountain wind at terrifying speed. Due to the brute impact, the arrow sinks deep into the bark of a sturdy tree. Completely amazed by the demo, our guy realizes that this is how you actually shoot a bow. Right after, he takes his position and draws the bowstring, applying tons of force. The veteran hunter inspects the rookie's form up close. Trying to keep the weapon steady, Juin is amazed by the old man's ability to stay rock solid during the shot. At that second, the mentor orders the young man to stay completely focused on the goal. The old hunter emphasizes that he needs to memorize the terms and steps required to become a real hunter. Maintaining his focus, our guy accepts that he must learn and train hard to solve problems on his own. With a look of pure determination, he swears to himself to become a capable man to provide for his wife and daughter. Far from the training, the day remains calm and bright outside the rustic old cabin. Inside, little Dorothy has fun on the bed, happily singing about Juin's and Lizzie's unique traits. The child sits on the bed rubbing her belly, super happy to have a full stomach. Showing a beaming smile, the girl says it feels like the delicious meat is expanding inside her. Tidying up nearby items, Lizzie lets out a super sweet and joyful laugh. Dorothy looks at her adoptive mother with warmth, noticing she smiles so much more since Juin joined their routine. The girl sadly recalls that before this change, neither of them had the habit of laughing in that house. Soaking in that peaceful moment, the girl admits listening to her laugh brings a cozy feeling, like warming up by a fireplace. However, the kid's mind starts filling with questions about the young man. She tries to process reality, remembering that Lizzie was her late father's wife, and currently the rookie is her new husband. Because of this, Dorothy pictures herself walking alongside the couple, aware that they are not her biological parents. Fear grips the girl's heart, worried that Juin might end up taking only his partner with him down the road. Totally deflated, she wonders if the two will abandon her one day as well, repeating the rejection she faced in the past. The old scar returns fiercely, bringing back memories of harsh words labeling her as useless. In her memory pops the terrifying image of her father, who treated her with extreme aggression for not being a boy to help out on the mountain. Feeling a heavy chest, the girl lowers her head, terrified of being worthless to her new family. Suddenly, the girl jumps off the bed, determined to check on the food before anything else. Spotting the untouched wooden bucket, Dorothy takes a breath of relief, confirming the meat is safe for now. At that moment, she peeks around the corner of the room and notices Lizzie is gone. The child hides near the entrance, wondering if her mother thinks she is playing hide-and-seek. A loud noise from outside startles the child instantly. The girl cracks the wooden door open slightly to peer outside. Shivering in fear, Dorothy recognizes the villagers and remembers how they used to act with pure malice and brutality. The girl scrambles to hide behind some rocks, terrified that her adoptive mother might get hurt like before. One of the intruders yells aggressively, demanding to know where that strong food smell is coming from and calling the woman a thief. Cornered against the wall, Lizzie tries to explain, stating her newly arrived husband hunted and brought the food home. The man laughs mockingly in her face, doubting that some random newcomer could hunt in that forest. Standing her ground, the wife insists the intruders step inside and see for themselves that nothing was stolen. Out of patience, the guy commands Lizzie to shut up and shoves her with crazy force. The villagers barge into the dark cabin, rummaging through every corner of the room. However, they quickly find the massive wolf hide laid out, completely shocked by the discovery. The leader of the crew runs his hand over the dark fur, celebrating the massive windfall, knowing that thing is worth a huge fortune. Driven by greed, the guy commands his thugs to search the entire house for any other valuable loot. Hiding in the dark corner, Dorothy shrinks back in pure panic at the intruder's commotion. The little girl holds her breath, praying the hidden meat doesn't get snatched by these goons. Right at that second, Lizzie bursts into the room in a total panic, trying to stop the robbery. Showing some serious guts, she throws her arms wide in front of the wolf pelt, blocking the dude's path. Standing her ground, she gets right in the attackers' faces, declaring that the item is strictly family property now. The head honcho of the gang glares at her with a look packed with pure annoyance and deep spite. In a seriously cheap shot, he delivers a heavy blow to Lizzie as payback for her talking back. The shock of the hit sends the young woman flying hard against the wooden floorboards. Sprawled out and in major pain, she lets out low groans, totally unable to get back on her feet right away. Watching this absolute nightmare unfold, little Dorothy freezes up, completely shell-shocked. Down on the floor, Lizzie struggles to get her bearings while the thugs circle her like vultures. Slowly, she lifts her head, looking at the home invaders with an expression of pure helplessness. The little girl remembers how, back in the day, she used to play pretend and ignore everything around her as a coping mechanism for this exact kind of mess. Crying her eyes out in her hiding spot, Dorothy gets hit with a massive guilt trip, remembering she was always called a burden for hiding away. The intruder mocks Liz's resistance, asking if she actually thought her life leveled up just because she bagged a new hubby. His sidekick chimes in that mountain guardians are super rare to stumble upon, and everything will be chill as long as they keep their mouths shut. Quick as a flash, the guys grab the woman by the arms, threatening to drag her deep into the woods. While the henchmen scoop up the valuables, Lizzie thrashes around, trying to break free from the leader's grip. The guy threatens to spin the block at the crack of dawn and turn the cabin to ashes if she breathes a word of this to her husband. Yanking the young woman outside, he laughs at the whole situation, bragging that he only showed up on a whim and hit the absolute jackpot. The door slams shut with a massive bang, leaving little Dorothy totally alone in the dark room. The girl makes a desperate dash straight for the wooden door. Busting outside, the kid scans the yard in a panic, getting a horrible gut feeling that something awful is about to go down with her adoptive mom. Unable to hold back the anxiety, Dorothy breaks down, sobbing in absolute terror. Leaning on a crate in the yard, the kid screams Juwon's name at the top of her lungs, begging him to hurry back. Way out in the distance, that desperate scream echoes through the trees, bringing the terrifying vibe that Lizzie is being taken away by the bad guys. Strolling down the tree-lined path with his mentor, the MC hears the veteran hunter complain that the day felt way too dragged out. Suddenly, our MC stops dead in his tracks, catching the old man's attention, who totally notices the instant vibe shift. In a huge rush, he throws a quick bow of respect to the veteran hunter and shoots off a fast thanks for everything regarding the training. Right then, that piercing cry hits his ears loud and clear, and our guy recognizes Dorothy's voice in a heartbeat. Whipping his head toward the cabin, he connects the dots. The kid would never cry up a storm like that unless things were going seriously sideways. Heart-pounding, the MC sprints through the forest out of his mind with worry, wondering if a total disaster went down while he was out. Tearing through the brush, he makes a vow to himself, absolutely zero mercy if anyone laid a finger on his new family. The second he hits the clearing, our MC is floored by the sickening sight of these goons dragging his wife away. Taken over by pure, unfiltered rage, he swears to wipe the floor with these cowards, no matter who they are or what their deal is. Giving them zero time to react, the MC strikes like lightning, leaving the criminals completely dizzy from his surprise entrance. Running on pure instinct, he drops a devastating punch right onto the redhead's face, putting all his pent-up stats into it. The impact sends the attacker flying, making him eat dirt hard and leaving his buddies absolutely shook. Down on the ground and holding her bruised face, the wife calls out for her hubby through her tears, so relieved he showed up right on time. Stomping onto the grass with serious boss energy, our MC boxes in the rest of the crew, making the cowards backpedal in total panic. Faced with the guy's crazy strength, the beefiest henchman takes a few steps back in terror, throwing his hands up in a totally useless block. Not giving the enemy a single second to think, Juwon delivers a high, pinpoint kick straight to the thug's face. Thanks to that brutal hit, the dude crumples to the floor groaning in agony, totally defeated right at the hero's wife's feet. Furious at how this is playing out, the last blonde intruder rushes in hot, throwing a wild punch at our guy. Capitalizing on the sloppy move, the MC dodges smoothly, grapples the enemy, and hoists him right up into the air. In one fluid motion, he slams the attacker upside down with absolute savage energy. The criminal crashes hard into the dirt, soaking up every ounce of that massive impact. Right then, the MC mounts the downed intruder and raises a fist, totally aware he can't just call it a day here. Dropping heavy blows, he thinks about how messed up people can be, convinced that showing even a drop of weakness will just make them spin the block on his family again. Standing tall and striking a menacing pose, the MC decides he needs to install some serious trauma in these cowards' heads to make sure they never even think about coming back. Right at the peak of his rage, Lizzie comes up from behind and grabs her husband's arm, snapping him out of it. She calls the MC by his name, which makes the guy drop his guard a bit once he hears the stress in his partner's voice. Out of nowhere, she shrieks in terror, telling him to watch his back just as the beaten intruder sneaks up holding a sickle behind the guy. Flexing his crazy reflexes, Juwon spins and catches the coward's wrist midair, stopping the blade right before it does any damage. Without missing a beat, he twists the attacker's arm with surgical precision, making the guy howl in agony while trying to fight off the hold. With eyes giving off pure nightmare fuel, the young man preps the finishing blow, completely taken over by anger. The veteran hunter comes running in, demanding the kid put a stop to the beatdown that exact second. Placing a hand on his apprentice's chest, the old man tells him to chill out while the criminal scrambles away muttering. Speaking sternly in the local tongue, the mentor points at the cabin and snaps the guy back to reality, asking if he hasn't noticed how terrified his daughter is from all this chaos. Startled by the interruption, the wife turns to look at the house, suddenly super worried about the kid. Still huddled in the corner, Dorothy is crying her eyes out over everything that just went down. Seeing the little girl in tears, the MC snaps back to his senses and just takes in the scene without saying a word. Smoke drifts up from the cabin's roof as the crazy brawl outside finally starts to cool off. Watching her husband, the young woman thinks about how he seemed so gentle, like he didn't have an angry bone in his body, but realizes he can actually get terrifyingly violent. In that split second, the awful flashbacks of her ex-husband flood back, making her paranoid that he might just be like all the rest. Surrounded by the wrecked attackers, she admits to herself that panic totally took the wheel, terrified she was about to get the exact same toxic treatment. But then she catches Juwon's soft gaze and realizes all that terror just poofed away instantly. Looking at his face, she gets that those eyes had zero intention of hurting her, they were just out to protect her at all costs. He just stares at his partner, low-key worried that she's scared of his vibe now. The MC says her name super softly and takes a few slow steps forward, while she questions why her own trauma response had her tripping so hard. She tries to ground herself by gripping the edge of her dress super tight. With her hands shaking, she asks herself why she's hesitating so much when the danger's gone, which only makes him think she's terrified of him. Catching the sad puppy look on his face, she hopes in her mind that he doesn't keep looking so heartbroken. The young woman figures it would be super easy to just say she's not scared, but hits a wall because of the language barrier. Shaking even worse now, she moves her arms, trying to hype herself up to close the gap between them. Suddenly, the wife calls his name out loud, making the call to show him what's really up. With total determination, she takes a few steps toward him across the grass. She gets close and grabs his hands, which totally catches the MC off guard. The young woman squeezes her hubby's hands, realizing that the exact second of that warm touch gave her the ultimate green light. Smiling peacefully, the wife thinks to herself that as long as she sticks by this guy's side, she'll be safe and nobody will ever be able to mess with her again. Right after, she softly intertwines her fingers with his. Showing major gratitude, she flashes a gorgeous smile with tear-filled eyes, just overflowing with relief. The MC just looks at her quietly, taking in how sweet and genuine that move was. Resting her face softly against his hand, his partner cries while he whispers her name. Hit right in the feels, he pulls her into a warm hug, whispering his own thank you. Holding his wife tight, the guy wonders to himself why she's the one acting so grateful. He figures he's the one who should be saying thanks, considering he scored a whole new lease on life. Right then, a tiny noise from the cabin makes the young woman break the hug in a flash. Peeking shyly through the crack, little Dorothy pops up, sniffling with watery eyes. In a rush, the mom calls her hubby and points at the house to show him where the kid is hiding. Sprinting across the grass, she calls out to the kid in a total panic, with the MC right on her heels. When she hits the front door, she crouches down all worried and asks if the little girl is okay after that massive jump scare. But then, the mom steps back a second later, totally confused as to why Dorothy is acting so skittish and shaking in front of her. Curled up on the step, the kid can barely move thanks to some major anxiety. In her head, the girl remembers she was the one who called for backup, but watching her adoptive dad go absolute goblin mode on the bad guys was way too much nightmare fuel for a kid. Painful flashbacks take over Dorothy's mind, bringing back visions of bruised faces caused by the toxic people from her past life. Consumed by the fear that she might end up the same way, she remembers all the times she had to swallow her tears just to avoid getting bullied even worse. Convinced that this whole mess is completely her fault, the kid bursts into tears and makes a run for it. Holding the kid in her arms, the wife asks, totally baffled, what Dorothy's deal is right now. Scared of being ignored and left in the dust like with her old family, the kid figures she needs to drop an apology as soon as possible to keep the peace. Kneeling by the door, Lizzie tries to comfort little Dorothy, saying sorry for hiding instead of helping and begging the kid not to ditch her. The young woman admits she only pretended not to know her earlier because she was low-key terrified those creeps would find the kid. Pulling her into a big hug, she swears the girl has absolutely zero reason to feel guilty. Trying to calm her daughter down, the wife declares the bad vibes are gone and everything is gonna be perfectly fine because their dad is here to tank for them. But dropping the dad word throws the kid for a massive loop, instantly reminding her that her bio dad passed away ages ago. Lizzie super sweetly clears things up, explaining that Juin is her new husband, making the whole situation way easier to grasp. The kid connects the dots at lightning speed, realizing this literally makes the guy her brand new dad. Just to double check, the woman asks if she gets that she's her adoptive mom now, getting a super shy yeah in return. It finally fully clicks for Dorothy. If she's Lizzie's kid, then Juin is officially her pops. Mind blown, she checks out the guy's epic stance outside, still trying to process the big update. She asks again if he's really her dad, and her mom locks it in with absolute certainty. Patting the kid's head, the wife promises Juin is built totally different from the mean guy who kicked the bucket, and that he's someone who actually has their backs. The young woman breaks it down, saying the only reason the guy wrecked those awful attackers was because she called for an SOS. Hearing that, the girl starts looking at the family's hero through the door crack in a whole new light. Totally amazed by the reveal, Dorothy feels her heart doing flips of joy as she accepts Juin as her real dad. Watching the guy from afar, the kid notices his crazy build and massive hands, realizing just how overpowered her new dad really is. Riding that hype, she sprints happily into the yard, amazed that she scored such a top-tier guardian for herself and her mom. In the kid's mind, memories pop up of how he never once said a mean word to her and always gives her the best hugs at night. Dorothy also remembers his sweet vibe on the day she got her very own name, a moment that literally changed her life forever. Totally starry-eyed over the whole thing, the kid thinks it's just wild that someone so wholesome is actually her dad. Caught completely off guard, Juin jumps when he hears the little girl shouting for him. The girl charges at the MC with eyes shining with pure joy. The hero throws his arms wide open instantly, ready to catch his kid with all the love in the world. With a mega jump, Dorothy launches herself into his arms, getting caught in an insanely tight and cozy hug. Squeezing the kid tight, the guy admits he doesn't understand a single word she's yelling in the local language, but feels like he gets the exact vibe anyway. Soaking up that precious moment, he rests his face against the kid's head, feeling some deep inner peace. But out of nowhere, the wholesome mood gets wrecked when the guy catches a highly questionable smell. Looking down, he realizes the kid's clothes are completely soaked from all that intense stress. Seeing the girl's pure, happy face, Juin almost feels bad for noticing the little accident, but knows he needs to swap her clothes fast so she doesn't catch a bug. Moving quick, the family's hero jogs over to his wife, carrying the kid so they can handle this little oopsie together. The whole thing turns into a super cute family moment, with Lizzie hugging her husband from behind while he holds the kid. Just then, little Dorothy's radar locks onto something super important that got left behind nearby. Pointing at the dirt hyped out of her mind, she squeals with joy, announcing she found the meat they stashed earlier. The blonde kid takes off like a rocket across the yard, not giving a single flying care about the knocked-out bad guys on the path. Armed with crazy determination, she makes a beeline for her absolute biggest treasure of the day. Reaching the goal, Dorothy slams the brakes in front of the wooden bucket packed with fresh meat. Without missing a beat, the kid hugs the bucket like it's her literal lifeline. The girl's eyes practically sparkle when she sees that the family's premium loot is still totally untouched inside. Running right behind her panicking, Juin and Lizzie try to cut the kid off before she causes a disaster. Hugging the heavy container, Dorothy flexes with all her might, trying to drag the bucket all by herself. Our MC is just impressed by the kid's grind set, thinking it's wild she can even budge that thing. The wife breathes a sigh of relief, while the guy figures his daughter's obsession with meat is bordering on scary. To fix the issue, Juin steps up and lifts the wooden bucket like it weighs nothing. Little Dorothy ends up getting hoisted into the air along with the container, mind blown by her dad's crazy stats. Getting hit with that look of pure worship just over a tub of meat, the MC jokes in his head that being this kid's idol is the easiest side quest ever. Stressed about the situation, the wife uses hand signals telling her hubby to haul the food inside right this second. The young woman points out he also needs to get little Dorothy indoors, since hanging around outside is still super sketchy. Following orders, Juin carries the kid and the bucket into the rustic cabin. Back outside, the guy wipes the sweat off his face, finally feeling the toll of all that madness. He marches with absolute purpose toward the intruders who are still out cold on the grass. The MC's expression goes dark, radiating heavy boss energy, making it obvious he's not quite done dealing with these criminals. But the veteran hunter steps in the way, blocking his path and telling him to drop it right now. Shaking his head no, the master warns his apprentice that he does not have the green light to take these guys out. Anger bubbles up inside Juin when he realizes that if he gets locked up, he'll be back to being a prisoner and lose his whole life all over again. Glancing at the front door where his family is waiting, the guy admits he's got VIPs to protect now and can't afford to act like a loose cannon. Glaring at the unconscious goons with pure disgust, he warns them that he's memorized every single face and promises a game over for them if they ever cross his path again. Taking the old man's advice, the young guy finally backs down and leaves the attackers in the dirt. The hunter points at the crates the criminals dropped, telling the guy to loot everything since it's all top-tier survival gear for the mountain. Taking the win, the MC opens the front door, reuniting with his wife and daughter safe and sound in the lit room. He walks in carrying the reclaimed loot boxes, locking in more resources for his family's future. Dropping the heavy wooden crate on the floor, the guy starts sorting out the house's new gear. Gripping a hammer tight, he thinks about his tragic backstory and decides that losing a family once was more than enough trauma for one lifetime. A look of massive relief washes over his face as he realizes that, this time around, he managed to clutch up and stop a disaster. Turning to his partner and the kid, the MC makes a personal vow to shield them both no matter the cost, regardless of whatever boss fights come their way. With a super gentle touch, he brushes Lizzie's bruised cheek and feels bad he can't just spam his healing magic to fix the mark on the spot. Holding her hubby's hand super affectionately, the young woman tries to chill him out, saying everything is perfectly fine. Trying to cheer his partner up, Juin squishes her cheeks in a super sweet and goofy way. In a quick stealthy move, he scoops his wife up into his arms, leaving her totally stunned. The guy defends his move, claiming the floor is way too freezing for her to be walking around barefoot after all that trauma. Suddenly, the MC's attention gets hijacked by something crazy happening right in front of him. Even Lizzie's jaw drops when she realizes the purple bruise on her face just magically vanished into thin air. Holding his wife, the hero wonders, totally amazed, if his weird magic grinding actually paid off. A look of absolute victory hits the guy's face, and he hypes himself up over his brand new achievement. Super pumped, he figures he finally managed to tame the healing magic, leaving the woman totally lost by the update. Miles away in the toxic people's village, an angry voice echoes, asking if that stupid newbie totally lost his marbles after the brawl. In the town, the chief yells while his wife chases a bird, complaining that the rookie doesn't even respect his own boss and keeps sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. Annoyed, the woman snaps back, asking if handing over one measly piece of cloth to the mountain guardian really triggers him that much. Clapping back, he complains about wasting fabric they hoarded for 10 years, but she challenges him, pointing out that they desperately need the guardian on their side. The guy tries to backpedal, claiming he had zero choice because the kid had real combat stats, and if more people got injured, their yearly harvest would be completely cooked. Calling his wife clueless, he claims she isn't seeing the big picture, but she fires back, asking what master plan made him fork over the cloth so easily. Right then, old Gus drops the intel to the chief that the newbie had animal bite marks that weren't there before, and they were healing at an insanely broken speed. Mind blown by the news, the village leader connects the dots and figures out the so-called mountain guardian is actually a straight-up healer mage. Resting his face in his hand, the guy realizes he needs to play this super carefully, since even top-tier royals would want a piece of a caster that overpowered. Daydreaming about royal cash, he quickly calculates he could flip the young guy for an astronomical amount of gold if some very important person showed interest. Swallowed by greed, the chief flashes a villainous smirk, plotting to upgrade his lifestyle way past some basic community leader if his schemes actually work out. Pacing the streets, he calms down by reminding himself that the locals are way too basic to even realize there's a healer living nearby. But his biggest nightmare is that the rumor spreads, and some guild or noble swoops in and snatches the guy before he can cash out. Dead set on not fumbling the bag, he decides Gus is the only reliable dude to keep tabs on the guy while he hunts for a noble willing to buy the caster. Switching up his strategy with his partner, the chief tells her to go network with the guardian's wife, warning her that the kid picked up hunting skills scary fast and is super sharp. The woman listens up as he warns that the rookie is operating on a whole different level and might eventually catch on to their stolen goods racket if they aren't careful. Grabbing his wife by the shoulders, he tells her to go play besties with the guy's partner so they can score rabbit pelts for dirt cheap. His partner agrees to the hustle and turns to leave, tossing in that women have to team up for chores anyway. Watching his wife walk off, the chief thinks they might have to refund some of the loot they swiped from the Guardian's place. Staring at his own feet, the guy admits the young dude is way out of the league of the usual prisoners, and ignoring that fact would just spawn a ton of lag later on. Meanwhile, back on the mountain, a chunk of metal gets shoved straight into a blazing fireplace. Staring at the crackling flames, a voice regrets having to pull a move like this, but accepts there's no other way out. Flashing a dark, firelit smile, old Gus figures you have to sacrifice a little meat if you want to reach the bone. A few days later, the vibe at the old wooden cabin is pure zen, paired with a happy tune drifting through the yard. Stretching out in the yard, Juin notices with a smile that his partner seems to be in a fantastic mood again. The young woman happily sorts the laundry, while the guy guesses the village chief sent more freebies that morning because he thought the first drop was a fail. Watching little Dorothy smiling from ear to ear over the items, he wonders if getting old stuff back really gives that much of a serotonin boost, noting that his wife wasn't even this hyped when she got magically healed. With a soft look, our MC realizes that watching his wife just proves that real happiness is hidden in the most basic, wholesome details of life. Totally smitten, the young guy admits to himself that this is exactly why he's so head over heels for the awesome woman he married. Already geared up for the grind, he calls out that he's heading out, surprising the woman while she folds the fabric. In a super wholesome vibe, the young woman waves goodbye with a sweet smile, while Juin heads off to hunt feeling completely at peace. Standing at the front door, the woman waves and tells her hubby to stay safe while grinding in the mountains. Trekking toward the woods, Juin remembers Gus mentioning that today's training quest was all about hunting rabbits. Walking past the chopped firewood, the guy keeps pushing forward, seriously hoping they actually manage to snag some loot. The image of little Dorothy happily bouncing around with a chunk of meat pops into his head, giving him a massive buff to bring back a rabbit to hype up the hungry kid. Gripping his axe tight, the guy hesitates for a split second, wondering if he'll actually have the guts to take out an adorable critter once he finds it. Shaking his head to ditch the doubts, he reminds himself he has to delete his modern world mindset if he wants to survive as a hunter. But the second he imagines a fluffy white bunny, his brain instantly face swaps it with an adorable version of his own wife. Facepalming in total despair, the hero realizes that comparing the animal to his partner is turning this hunting trip into pure psychological torture. Pushing into the sunlit forest, the young guy prays with all his heart that the rabbit they find is the ugliest, most cursed mob on the planet. Hiding in the shady bushes, a dark monster with glowing red eyes tracks the rookie hunter's every move. Back at the base after the grind, Juin breathes a sigh of relief for wrapping up his daily quests in the yard. Looking at the massive pile of chopped wood, he realizes he already fetched water and split all the logs, but still has a ton of downtime left. Stretching out his sore muscles, the young guy thinks about using this free time to grind his magic skill tree a bit. Staring at his own hands feeling salty, he complains that spamming heals got super easy, but he still can't cast a single basic spark. The memory of that insane fire deleting the giant wolf pops up, leaving the guy totally confused as to why the skill only triggered that one time. With a thinking face on, Juin wonders if the magic only activated back then because he was in a critical danger zone. Taking a deep breath to lock in, he decides to try channeling the mana in his core, just like they do in those fantasy mangas. Striking a dramatic anime pose with his hand out, the young guy shouts the name of a flaming storm spell with all his might. When literally nothing happens, he awkwardly drops his hand, admitting he kept his expectations low so he wouldn't get too tilted. In his imagination, he'd be little Dorothy's absolute idol casting flashy spells, since healing magic has zero special effects and doesn't exactly wow the kid. Staring at his own finger, he lets out a sad sigh, really just wanting to spark a tiny flame to hype the kid up. Out of nowhere, tiny sparks start popping off his fingertips, completely blowing our MC's mind. A tiny flame finally spawns on his index finger, and he celebrates the win, even if it looks like a cheap gas station lighter. Hearing the commotion in the yard, Dorothy opens the front door and spies on her adoptive dad's moves. The kid's eyes go wide, practically sparkling with pure hype at seeing actual real-life magic. Pointing excitedly, the girl screams in pure amazement, swearing her dad is spawning fire out of thin air. Stressed about the hazard, the young guy warns her she's way too close and could end up taking fire damage. Totally mesmerized by the glow, Dorothy ignores the warning and announces she has to go speedrun to tell her mom about her dad's epic spell. Freaked out by the sudden sprinting, the woman rushes out of the house, calling for the kid in the middle of the yard. The second she locks eyes on her hubby, the young woman freezes in place and slaps a hand over her mouth in total shock, seeing the fire dancing on his hand. Bursting with pride, Dorothy points at her dad to show off the spell, while Ju-in sweats buckets trying to keep the flame alive, hoping to flex on them even more. His partner breaks into a starstruck smile, and the young guy takes the win for dual-wielding magics, figuring he'll at least be able to start campfires with zero effort in the future. After the initial hype fades, mom and daughter just casually turn around and walk away, leaving the guy feeling slightly nerfed by their fast reaction. The two of them speedwalk back inside, totally ignoring the hunter standing in the yard. Left all alone on the grass, Ju-in stands there super confused, muttering that he literally gave it his all just to spawn that one spark. Staring at his flaming hand, our MC shakes his arm around, trying to figure out how to toggle the power off. After failing completely, he just rage quits the attempts and decides to tank the tiny flame until it despawns on its own. Suddenly, the fire just vanishes in the blink of an eye, leaving the guy even more confused. Clenching his fists, he grumbles that the magic system in this universe is way too buggy and he can't figure out the meta at all. Stepping through the rustic door, the family's MVP enters the chill vibe of their old house. Right away, he spots little Dorothy leaning over the wooden bucket and grabs the kid's attention. The kid turns around with a teary, super salty look on her face, complaining that the piece of meat got way too small. Looking at his adopted daughter's disappointment, the couple realizes the lack of good loot is making the girl seriously depressed. Putting on a determined face, Ju-in swears to himself that today he'll secure some fresh rabbit meat to keep the family buffed and happy. Back out on the grind in the woods, the young guy gets jump-scared by old Gus asking if he's ready to start the raid. Deep in the forest, the veteran Gus pops out from the trees, signaling his arrival to kick off the tutorial. The guy grips his bow confidently, stating he's fully ready to start the hunt. At the cabin entrance, Lizzie and little Dorothy wave him off, wishing him a safe run through the mountains. He pats the kid on the head, praising her for being on her best behavior. Our MC also tells his wife to stay super alert and keep the base secure while he's offline. Without hesitating, the young woman steps up and wraps her hubby in a super warm hug, resting her face against his chest. Feeling totally left out, Dorothy looks up and announces she wants to get some of that affection too. Thinking the whole thing is too cute, he crouches down to give his daughter a kiss, while Lizzie watches the whole thing with a massive smile right behind them. The young guy kisses the kid's cheek, leaving her glowing with absolute happiness. But wait, suddenly he catches a familiar scent and asks if the kid was sneaking meat again, getting a hyped yes that leaves the mom totally stunned. Far from the base, the mountain trek kicks off with the main quest of locating the traps the mentor set up. Along the path, Gus keeps dropping lore, pointing at the trees scattered along the way. The veteran hunter also makes the rookie pause a bunch of times to inspect tracks and mob droppings on the ground. Just then, the guy slams the brakes when he hears the old man order him not to move a single pixel. The master points straight ahead silently, signaling they finally found the target of today's quest. Our MC's eyes bug out, totally shocked and unable to process what he's looking at. Right in front of him is this bizarre mob with pointy teeth, which the old man claims is a rabbit, making the young guy seriously question that lore drop. He immediately asks if the thing evolved from a kangaroo, given how broken this universe's physics are. Furious, the beast trashes around aggressively, trying to break out of the trap at all costs. Gus checks the creature's health points and figures it got caught pretty recently, making it the perfect setup for the rookie's first kill. But the mentor warns that putting down a struggling beast is never an easy or casual side quest. He explains that the vibe is way different from hunting a defenseless target, claiming that the memory of your first kill gets permanently burned into your hard drive. Cool as a cucumber, the veteran orders the student to notch the arrow he gave him earlier. The master hypes up the young guy's intelligence for already picking up so much of the local language since he spawned on the mountain. Right after, he declares that this clutch moment is entirely on the rookie and takes a step back. Watching the animal struggle, the master says he's going to show him in real life just how brutal hunting can get. The old man tells the apprentice to close the gap and step a little closer to the trapped beast. As the young guy moves up with his weapon, Gus tells him to aim perfectly and shoot the creature in the leg first. Prepping his weapon, Ju-in hears that at first, the target just looks like any random mob in the woods. The veteran hunter notes that the mountain is balanced and gives humans zero buffs, warning that any pointless toxic behavior will hit back like karma when the animals get the upper hand. The mentor stresses that today's lesson cannot be wiped from memory if the guy ever wants to log back into his home in one piece. Drawing the bowstring, Juin aims at the lower limb, thinking that this shot won't delete the target. It'll just cause a bunch of useless, painful damage. The rookie hesitates with his gear, completely confused as to why he's being forced to pull such a toxic move. Losing his patience, the old man points a hostile finger, ordering him to shoot the leg before going for the headshot. The weird beast lets out a crazy loud screech, trying to intimidate them both and escape the danger zone. Staring at the prey, our MC gets a bitter taste in his mouth, getting flashbacks to how humiliating his first spawn in this brutal world really was. His mind hits rewind to that nightmare sequence where he woke up nerfed and caged in that filthy wagon. The trauma of the people left behind in that horror show environment, where civilization basically glitched out, hits him hard. Snapping back to the present with the creature roaring, he admits he knows nothing about hunting, but swears he fully understands the survival meta of this place. With his bow raised, he finally gets that his mentor is pushing his limits to the absolute maximum to class change him into a real hunter. The string tension releases with zero warning, and the projectile cuts through the mountain wind with insane speed. But the arrow misses the hitbox by a single pixel, sticking into the dirt right behind the animal's leg. The beast gets a massive jump scare from the near miss, but keeps thrashing around with full health. Super embarrassed and stressed, the guy stutters, trying to convince his mentor he just grazed the beast. With absolutely zero tolerance for the fail, the hunter orders him to shoot again, making the guy ask if he seriously has to redo the whole sequence. The old man demands he aim specifically at the front legs this time, while the guy pulls the string back, thinking all this cruelty is just overkill. Right then, he snaps back to reality and decides he has to put Lizzie and Dorothy's safety way above whatever pity he feels for the creature. Locking onto the target, he tries his hardest to mute the beast's cries, telling himself they're just default audio tracks of a wild mob. Driven by a massive urge to protect and carry his new family, the guy lets the arrow fly with zero hesitation. The projectile flies straight into the animal's glowing eye, while the young guy accepts the guilt trip if it means keeping his girls safe. Dead silence takes over the forest after he chooses to drag out the target's pain on purpose, instead of speedrunning the kill. Standing over the downed beast, he thinks that hunting has zero poetic vibes and is basically a glitch in the universe's natural code. Staring at his own shaking hands, Juin realizes this is the hardcore reality of the food chain and promises never to forget this moment. The master gathers the looted mobs in a sack and orders the young guy to haul it all back to base, leaving the rookie speechless at the massive amount of food. Looking super pleased, the veteran hunter gives a really genuine thanks for the apprentice's hard work. They both restart the trek through the woods, with the older guy saying they only need to check the very last trap of the run. But Juin notices something weird about his inventory and turns his head slightly to investigate. He checks the defeated mobs he's carrying on his back, feeling the heavy carry weight. The master points to their final destination, telling him to hurry up, but the rookie notices that one animal's fur looks completely different from the rest. Curious about the mismatched skin, our MC halts his march instantly and asks the pro hunter to pause for a second. Juin pitches the idea that instead of deleting this last animal, they could just farm it to generate future resources. Using excited hand gestures, he tries to explain to his mentor that their fast spawn rate would guarantee backup food if they ever hit a famine event. Caught off guard by the wild strategy, the master tries to play it cool, finding the kid's imagination pretty funny. The veteran hunter greenlights the idea instantly, getting the apprentice super hyped that he got permission to switch up the meta. Being extra careful, the guy secures the target tightly to make sure it gets transported safely and alive back to the village. The capture quest is a total success, and our MC carries the family's newest investment on his shoulders, overflowing with pride. Tiptoeing to avoid giving the creature any fall damage, he adjusts the bundle with ridiculous gentleness. A round, fluffy baby bunny waits quietly in the middle of the sunlit brush. Far away from there, old Gus's rustic shack sits lonely and totally silent deep in the mountains. Back inside the wooden base, the guy thinks about how, during his previous solo playthrough of life, he never found any motivation to start a family. Focused on crafting an item with his own knife, he admits that pouring his time into this manual labor gives him a super cozy feeling. Our MC looks at his crafted item with affection, realizing he finally unlocked a real purpose to exist and grind every single day. Suddenly, his attention gets hijacked by a curious detail on one of his mentor's shelves. He steps up to some old wooden blocks and notices the carved symbols are basically the alphabet for this world's language. Hyped at the chance to upgrade his communication stats, Juin grabs the panels, sure that learning the language will make co-op with his wife and kid way smoother. Juin points at the wooden boards, waving his hands around, trying to ask in the local tongue for old Gus to teach him how to read. The hunter notices the grind set and asks, kinda surprised, if the rookie really wants to study that. Staring the guy down, the master asks if that's exactly what he's after. Without blinking, our MC locks it in, totally sure he wants to learn no matter what. Faced with that much determination, the old man scratches his head, a bit torn trying to process such a weird request. Right after, he turns around and marches silently toward the back of the wooden shack. Digging through an old chest in the corner, the hunter mutters that the kid is going to need some extra gear for this tutorial. Juin grips the boards in a small bag tightly, begging again for lessons. Seeing this, Gus just rolls with it and hands over the whole starter pack for studying. Hauling a bulky green sack full of supplies, the master tells the apprentice to follow him. The guy obeys the command instantly, showing some serious hustle. Parked at a wooden workbench, our MC goes full focus mode on his studies, using a quill to practice his handwriting on a piece of trash paper. Watching the young guys grind from a distance, the mentor thinks he's a total oddball, unable to figure out what use reading has for a peasant in the middle of nowhere. The alphabet boards hang on the wall, while Gus remembers buying that gear ages ago, hoping to get drafted by a noble if he grinded enough war points. Resting his legs, the veteran hunter regrets all the hours he wasted grinding reading stats. He admits that if he knew his run would end up like this, he wouldn't have even bothered to learn. But he quickly shakes off those dark thoughts, choosing to leave it in the past since it doesn't even matter anymore. Staring at the sunlit mountains through the window, he decides it's time to track some goblin signs in the woods. Since the mobs probably set up a hidden camp, the mentor knows he'll have to push way deeper into the mountain range. Dark silhouettes with glowing red eyes camp out in the forest shadows. The old man knows that just like regular mobs in the spring, the spawn rate for these monsters shoots up crazy fast this time of year. Just then, the hunter notices the rookie locked into his studies, thinking his leveling speed is terrifyingly fast. The master is convinced that, with the right buffs, Juin will class change into a fighter fully capable of soloing anything. Limping along, old Gus complains that his nerfed leg is throbbing like crazy. He figures that's a dead giveaway that he's about to trigger the goblin squad any second. Flashing a dark, determined look, the master hunter swears to himself that he's going to wipe out every single one of those toxic beasts. Far from there, the peaceful wooden cabin just chills in the greenery under the bright daylight. Inside, Lizzie is crafting a huge piece of fabric, while little Dorothy asks, super hyped, if the new skin is for her and when it'll be done crafting. The mom nods with infinite patience. Flashing a sweet smile, the partner asks if the kid even realizes how many times she's spammed that same question, bursting with energy. The girl admits she has absolutely zero idea. Just then, the sound of the door opening pauses the chat. The young woman drops her work and calls her husband's name, surprised he logged off work so early. Seeing the guy, Dorothy throws her hands up and sprints over, shouting for her adoptive dad. Juin walks into the house with a warm smile, hauling his gear and a massive sack. Taking advantage of the moment, he hoists the girl up in his arms with zero effort. The kid cheers proudly about the new clothes, leaving the young guy totally amazed by the update. Suddenly, the house hero's radar pings something happening on the floor, and he lets out a confused noise. The giant loot bag dropped on the wood starts moving all by itself, sending a mini shockwave through the room. Completely fascinated by the glitch, Dorothy points at the sack, asking if it's some kind of magic item. Crouched on the floor without dropping the kid, Juin starts untying the knot one-handed, watching her partner's skills. Lizzie praises his strength, while the guy promises the kid it's not sorcery and he's about to reveal the loot drop. Trying to speedrun the process, his wife reaches out to help crack open the mystery bag. As soon as there's an opening, the head of a chubby, fluffy bunny pops out like a jack-in-the-box. Hanging onto her dad's arm, little Dorothy's eyes go wide with the cutest jump scare ever, realizing the little animal actually moved. Back on the ground, little Dorothy takes off chasing the bunny that's hopping freely around the room. Stressed about the kid's hype, Lizzie puts her arms out asking the girl to chill, promising she'll catch the pet for her. The woman inches her hands closer super carefully, trying to grab the fluffy baby that just broke out of its packaging. But the rabbit fast travels forward, spooking the wife, who instantly dashes back to avoid the collision. Little Dorothy watches the whole thing totally dialed in, amazed by how high the new pet's speed stat is. Suddenly, the kid points at the animal, shook, and stammers out that the rabbit has a super weird character design. The creature's furry ears stand out as the family notices a wild little detail right on top of its head. A tiny white horn is just chilling right in the middle of the creature's forehead, while it just looks around the room looking totally innocent and confused. The little girl covers her mouth, totally enchanted, declaring that weird glitch is the most adorable thing on earth. Triggered by her defense instincts, the mom warns the kid not to get close, worried that the horn might deal some actual damage. Pretty freaked out by the whole thing, the mom slowly backs up, promising she'll try to bag the animal to keep her daughter safe. Heart racing and looking super anxious, Lizzie gets ready to dive in and catch the weird mob. Moving at lightning speed, she finally manages to pin the rabbit down hard, completely shocked that she actually pulled it off so easily. Carrying the creature in her arms, the young woman thinks it's suspicious that a regular rabbit would just let itself get caught without putting up a massive fight. While scanning the new fluffy pet, she notices the beast's eyes are drooping heavily, making the woman realize something seriously buggy is going on. The creature shivers in pure terror in the woman's arms, as she spots something totally off and realizes with major anxiety that the bunny actually looks hurt. Tugging on her adoptive mom's clothes, little Dorothy feels terrible about the animal's low health and asks if it's taking a lot of damage. In a flash, the kid runs to her dad and yells frantically, demanding he heal the injured bunny. Juin registers the word injured, remembering he just unlocked his healing magic. Putting a hand on his chest with total confidence, the young guy asks Lizzie to pass the pet over, swearing he's going to patch up this glitch right now. His wife steps up slowly and hands the animal over to her husband like it's made of glass. Our MC holds the little pet super steady and gently, completely locked in on acting as the support class. Right then, a soft glow starts radiating from his hands, totally blanketing the hurt baby animal in his overpowered healing magic. The damage on the rabbit's skin deletes itself instantly, leaving little Dorothy absolutely mind-blown as she watches the pain vanish like a magic trick. Watching that epic display up close, the girl jumps for joy and hypes up her dad's sorcery at the top of her lungs. Juin just watches his daughter's hype, his heart totally full of pride. The young guy clears his throat trying to grab the family's attention and adjusts the animal in his lap, wanting to drop some lore about the rabbit, but his wife and kid are already totally simping over the new roommate. The exact second our MC leans down to place the animal on the floor, Dorothy body blocks him. The kid runs over carrying a rustic wooden basket and calls her dad to show off the freshly crafted bed she made with so much love. The young guy is surprised and totally captivated by how wholesome the move is. Juin gently sets the bunny down into the wooden basket, while his daughter watches the whole thing melting with love. Settled into its new spawn point, the baby animal instantly closes its eyes and falls into a super peaceful sleep, warming the kid's heart, who celebrates in whispers so she doesn't wake it up. Quest complete, the dad pats the kid's head with a huge smile and tells her to guard the new pet with her life. Not fully processing his dialogue, Dorothy just mumbles back curiously. Lizzie jumps in quick with super friendly vibes, explaining that her husband wants their daughter to take over the daily quest of caring for the bunny from now on. The kid's eyes go wide, feeling like an absolute VIP. Packed with massive determination and a huge smile, little Dorothy hugs the wooden basket tight. She promises, super proud, that she'll main the caretaker role and protect the creature. The little girl touches the pet's bed and swears to defend it 24/7, chilling there on the floor. The dad watches this wholesome tear moment alongside his wife. The couple trades a look packed with affection and teamwork, smiling and glowing over their daughter's pure and genuine dedication. Later that day, the rustic house stays wrapped in forest peace under the chill twilight glow. Already logged out in her makeshift bed, little Dorothy hugs the toy with deep affection under the covers and falls asleep, while Juin studies the wooden blocks in whispers. Chilling on the dark floor, the couple shares a study session. The husband remembers that his main goal in this nightmare universe was literally just escaping the transport where he was treated like livestock. But his ambitions leveled up fast, and he muses that humans really are greedy mobs, admitting he should probably show more gratitude for the base he's already managed to build. Watching his partner locked in next to him, he drops the fact that after securing a house and a family, his next side quest is expanding the zone so Dorothy has more room to play. Plus, the ultimate main quest right now is maxing out reading and writing to make their playthrough way easier. Wearing a peaceful smile, our MC figures his main drive to grind and level up doesn't come from greed, but from the massive appreciation he has for the partner he chose for this co-op run. The young woman struggles to sound out some words using the wooden blocks, fighting the obvious debuff of someone who grinded hard all day and just wants to log off and sleep. Noticing his partner's stamina is at zero, Juin leans into her subtly, wanting to pay back her hard work with some affection. Juin instantly starts lightly massaging the woman's tense shoulders, accepting this surprise buff. The young woman whispers a thank you, her voice heavy with shyness and exhaustion. Leaning on her in a sideways, chill hug, the guy thinks about how this simple touch just totally recharges his soul. His giant hands softly press into his wife's white clothes, focusing on deleting all the stress of the day from those small, delicate shoulders. Taking his wife's hands super gently, Juin gives them a sweet rub to chill her out. Giving in to the moment of total peace, the young woman rests her head on her partner's shoulder, soaking up the warmth of that safe hug. Bathed in the dim lamplight, the couple shares a moment of complete zen and closeness during the night. Far away from there, shadows swallow the front of a massive stone fortress in a distant zone. By the next morning, a carriage speedruns down a dirt road, while old Gus estimates he'll burn more than a whole day trying to reach his waypoint. Bouncing around inside, the village chief complains that his health is already shot and that wasting resources on this trip is a massive pain. But a greedy smirk pops onto his face, totally sure that all this grinding is going to pay off big time. The man remembers Juin's tanky build, wondering why that guardian is insanely buff, since the few healers out there are usually tiny and squishy. Super hyped about his discovery, he's convinced he's going to rake in massive amounts of gold coins by selling this premium intel. Right then, his radar catches the other passengers chatting about the rumors that the rival nation just summoned an absolutely broken hero. One of the guys in the transport calls cap on that story, guessing the enemy's so-called hero might just be a total fake-out. A second guy agrees with the doubt, saying it would be crazy to believe a distant myth and that any fake news would get exposed super fast. Eavesdropping on this chat, Gus snaps back to reality and realizes his village is dangerously close to the border of the enemy server. Terrified of a random raid dropping at any second, the old man decides he needs to flip the caster's info, grab the coins, and rage quit that zone for good. Totally clueless about all this danger, little Dorothy spawns into the house full of energy, calling her new pet to come play. Looking at the girl, Lizzie jokes that the creature is definitely not on the menu. The woman teases, asking if the kid is losing her mind, since even she knows you don't swallow baby animals. Catching the kid's reaction, the young woman tells her to chill with the extreme hype if she actually got the memo. Like she just remembered an urgent quest, the blonde girl shrieks, recalling she needs to feed the pet. Full of stamina, Dorothy dashes outside, announcing she's going to go buff the animals. Out in the yard, the little one wanders on the grass, looking confused when she spots her adoptive dad building a brand new wooden barricade. Suddenly it clicks and she figures out what the structure is for. Pumped, the kid steps up to the small wooden pen, remembering her main objective out there. Staring at the two massive, bizarre mobs Juin hunted, Dorothy mutters that those animals are way too huge and ugly. Even though she's not a fan of their character models, she chucks a pile of fresh greens on the dirt, ordering them to eat it all. The kid crosses her arms and informs the beasts that her schedule is booked solid today, demanding they behave on autopilot. Acting fast, she gathers up more leaves from the ground to make sure those beasts have an absolute feast. With a huge smile on her face, the little girl convinces herself she's also a magic user and can barely wait to flex her new skill to her dad. With her imagination running wild, Dorothy pictures using this overpowered power straight on the meat of those creatures, giggling just thinking about the banquet. Overflowing with pure joy, the girl tosses more greens to the beasts, celebrating her newest daily chore. Chilling on the floor with the wolf pelt in her lap, Lizzie stresses over the merchant caravan rolling into town, knowing they desperately need to restock supplies. Stroking the dark fur, she's sure it would flip for good money, but hates the idea of parting with her husband's first loot drop, totally torn on what to do. The young woman looks at Juin's silhouette, thinking the guy urgently needs a gear upgrade for clothes and boots, not to mention having to hoard food for the family. Shifting her focus to a basic rabbit pelt, the wife lets out a sigh, admitting that low-tier item won't even cover the fast travel fees. Putting on a serious, try-hard face, she makes a hardcore decision to guarantee her household survives. Gripping her own long hair tight, Lizzie gets ready to pull the trigger on what needs to be done. Without a second of hesitation, the woman uses the scissors to chop off her long locks. Sometime later, the hero's voice rings out from outside, announcing he logged back in from work. Little Dorothy speedruns over and throws herself into her adoptive dad's arms, missing him tons. Walking through the door, the guy gets a super warm welcome from his partner. But his eyes bug out in shock when he sees Lizzie's new character's skin, while the kid tugs his shirt, bringing up the update. Showing off her shoulder-length hair, the young woman flashes a sweet smile, listening to the kid exclaim that the long hair got deleted. Feeling a sharp pain in his chest, the family's hero calls out to his partner, his voice heavy with worry. Brushing off little Dorothy's curiosity, the mom drops the news super casually that she nerfed her hair length. The girl crosses her arms looking big mad, protesting that her adoptive mom's long hair was way too pretty to get chopped. Instantly figuring out why the update happened, Juin feels terrible, carrying the guilt that she had to sacrifice her own hair just to farm some currency. Mixed with sadness and affection, the guy takes slow steps toward the woman. Petting her short hair super gently, he begs for forgiveness from the bottom of his soul, catching his partner completely off guard. Looking at her hubby's caring expression, the wife thinks about how vastly different this guy is compared to every other NPC she's ever met. In her mind, Lizzie remembers that women in this broke region only grow their hair out to sell it just to survive. Being treated with so much care, she admits his concern is so sweet she literally wants to cry. Overwhelmed by the feels, the young woman throws herself into a massive hug, shedding tears purely out of joy for being so valued. Watching the scene, little Dorothy flashes a glowing smile, her soul warmed by how beautiful her family is. A bit later, the family hikes down the mountain toward the trade village, with the woman refusing to catch a ride on her husband's back so she doesn't drain his stamina. Carrying the kid on his shoulders, the hero rocks a huge smile of absolute joy. The trio keeps pushing down the tree-lined path with a super chill and laid-back vibe. Hitting the town, they find a buzzing plaza packed with tents and locals enjoying the morning. Little Dorothy wanders freely through the streets, enchanted by the delicious food smell floating in the air. Scanning the crowd, Juin wonders to himself how long it's been since he walked through a zone with this many players. Watching the pedestrians walk by, the memory of that infamous Christmas day in his original server hits him hard. Keeping pace with his partner and kid, the guy walks in silence, taking in the crazy contrast of his current playthrough. The cold image of the city spawns in his head, remembering exactly how isolated that Christmas night was. Back then, he felt like he had the invisibility cloak equipped, just a frustrated guy walking completely solo through a partying crowd. Snapping back to the sunny present, the young guy focuses on the sweet partner by his side and the kid bouncing with joy just ahead. With a relieved heart, he concludes that roaming around with his family is the absolute best buff ever, while the kid speeds up, totally starstruck. Pulled in by all the new stuff, Dorothy sprints toward the merchant stalls scattered around the village. The girl parks herself in front of the iron pots, begging her mom for permission to inspect the loot up close. Right next to them, a vendor's shouting grabs the buyer's attention, promising high payouts for top-tier goods. The blonde little girl watches the hustle, totally amazed by the fresh vibe of the area. Suddenly, a kid in premium skins spots Dorothy, slamming the brakes instantly. Checking the girl out from a distance, the rich kid thinks her features look super familiar, while the girl gets weirded out by the staring and stands there confused. Juin tells his partner to keep the kid on her radar, while the kid in expensive gear stays curious, thinking Dorothy looks basically identical to someone he knows. Nearby, the family's trade kicks off, with the vendor scrutinizing the hair Lizzie decided to flip. The merchant drops a tired sigh, setting up a super tense vibe while the duo waits for the trade to get approved. Sadly, the guy announces the market is oversaturated with this item, tanking the price hard and leaving the woman pretty depressed over the lowball offer. Inspecting the loot, the merchant notices the pelt is top tier and super thick, but decides to keep that stat to himself so he can scalp them. With absolute zero shame, he makes up some crap that he can only swap the item for low-tier trash, silently cheering when he sees the young woman hesitate and almost fall for the scam. Feeling like he secured the win, the guy says he'll throw in some basic items to finalize the trade. But Juin spawns out of nowhere and drops his hands on his partner's shoulders, leaving the merchant totally paralyzed with fear when he checks the giant's build. The hero just stares the scammer down in silence with a seriously intimidating glare. Giving zero room to negotiate, the guy snatches the rabbit pelt back firmly. The merchant tries to hold on to the loot, but folds immediately when he feels the young guy's ridiculous strength stat. With the pelt secured, Juin tells Lizzie they're fast traveling to a different village, warning her that the dude literally has scammer written on his face. Seeing the trade fail, the merchant starts panicking, but the young woman points out the next village is a massive trek away. Cut off before he can even attempt to bargain, the man stands there shook by the colossal guy's stance, while the wife is stunned, realizing she was about to get totally griefed. Trying to cover up his tracks, the vendor asks who's capping and swears he was just quoting the server's default price, making the woman realize how her lack of meta-knowledge almost cost them big. Out of options, the scammer completely folds, saying he'll take the loss and offering salt, a pot, and even men's gear in the bundle. The young woman is totally baffled by the guy's instant personality switch. But our MC doesn't back down and insists they need to find a zone that pays the fair market value for their grind. Worried about the travel distance, he mentions the next shop is far and offers to carry her, making his partner super flustered as she declines and insists she can walk just fine. Watching the duo walk away, the merchant screams in panic, begging them to hold up, spilling that the pelt was literally the highest quality item on the market. Ignoring the scammer's crying, the couple just keeps strolling peacefully through the market. Totally defeated, the merchant cries silently, realizing he just fumbled a god-tier trade. The family leaves the main trade hub behind, weaving through the tents and locals. Noticing the curious stares from other kids, Dorothy points at the guy with massive pride and yells that he's her dad, while the woman begs her to speed up her walking animation. The girl dashes ahead of them doing little hops, broadcasting to the whole server about her adoptive dad. The journey goes on smooth and bright, with the sunlight clipping through the leaves of the nearby trees. Tucked into her ride, little Dorothy enjoys the cozy smell around her, realizing her insanely buff dad is keeping her 100% safe. Almost dozing off, the girl wonders why the weather suddenly got so cozy, remembering she was freezing just a minute ago. It finally clicks when she realizes the hero stuffed her inside his own jacket to keep her warm during the run. Suddenly, the kid pokes her head out of the coat, remembering a super important detail. Panicking, she begs her dad to drop her on the ground as soon as possible, warning him she desperately needs to feed her new pet. Granting the request, Juin crouches down and unequips the girl with extreme care onto the dirt path. Dorothy takes off like a rocket toward the old house, announcing she's back at the top of her lungs. Not wasting a single frame, the little one heads straight to the bushes to grab the fresh food she farmed earlier. Glowing with happiness, the kid runs over holding a bunch of fresh leaves, offering the loot to the creature. But the girl's eyes fly open in a mix of shock and total disbelief. Staring at the little rustic bed, she notices her premium rabbit despawned without a trace. Dropping the grass, the girl collapses into an absolutely devastating crying fit. Lizzie rushes over in full panic mode to figure out the glitch, while the girl sobs uncontrollably, trying to explain that the pet went missing. The woman completely loses it seeing her daughter's heartbreak, whispering prayers for the creature to respawn. Right then, the hero walks into the yard trying to figure out what's causing all the aggro. Staring at the empty basket, the guy hears the terrible update from his partner about the adorable animal escaping. But the guy quickly notices Lizzie is also crying, heartbroken over the grind her hubby put in at the forest just to catch that mob. Juin just stands there stunned, thinking it's wild that both of them are having a total meltdown just because a pet clipped out of bounds. Unable to hold it in, he bursts out laughing super hard right in the middle of the yard. Outraged by his troll behavior, little Dorothy smacks his leg yelling that she hates him, while he tries to chill her out, saying he can just go farm another pet in the woods. Laughing at the adorable scene, our MC feels his chest fill with joy, amazed by the privilege of being able to share tears and laughs over such simple stuff. Far away from that cozy vibe, old Gus sneaks around silently in the shadows of a rocky mountain zone. Wearing a dark, locked-in expression, the veteran hunter whispers to himself that the moment he's been waiting for has finally dropped. The nightmare visual of the hidden camp deep in the rocks exposes the base of those toxic beasts. A giant lethal goblin lets out a loud, nasty growl in the dark, flashing its red eyes and jagged teeth. Taking cover behind a rock, the veteran hunter admits he wants to rush in and wipe them all out right there, but knows that would be a fatal, useless play. Scouting from a distance, he notices the zone is over capacity and calculates that once the food and captives run out, the beasts will start team killing each other. Packing serious lore knowledge, the old man warns himself that if a single beast loses its mind and decides to raid the human village, the whole squad will follow right behind it instantly. Analyzing the mobs, Gus admits that in a one-on-one they're super squishy, but the massive terror they cause comes from the fact they always rush in gigantic swarms. The painful flashbacks of women being dragged violently into that horror show environment highlight the brutal reality of pain and suffering they tank until their run ends. Ditching the spot, the hunter figures the instincts of those beasts are going to get a massive buff when spring drops, meaning they need to be stopped as soon as possible. Leaning on his cane, he hikes back down the path, totally convinced he's going to need that giant guy's damage to pull off his strategy. The flashback of Juin's grateful smile weighs on the old man's mind, making him feel guilty for having to manipulate the innocent newbie. Choking down the regret, Gus keeps walking, admitting he has zero other options but to send the rookie in to wipe the monsters. Changing maps, the morning spawns peacefully at the wooden cabin, with the partner stretching and yawning near the door. Then she hears her husband's heavy footsteps out in the yard and shifts her focus to the garden. The woman walks slowly over the grass to greet the hero, who just logged back in from his morning grind. As soon as she gets close, Lizzie gets a massive jump scare seeing the hunted animal in his hands, while Juin says what's up, asking if she just spawned in. Curious, his partner asks if he managed to catch another pet, making the guy feel a bit awkward while holding his weapon. Our MC's memory rewinds to the start of the day, recalling his totally failed attempt to grab the beast alive barehanded. Putting in maximum effort, he did a desperate dive onto the dirt, but the speedy creature just dashed away without breaking a sweat. Dodging the attack, the bunny landed perfectly safe with full health. Face-planted in the dirt and super tilted, the guy admitted that his quest to bring a live animal home totally flopped. Taken over by his competitive side, his face darkened as he swore not to abandon the quest, promising he'd catch that mob no matter what. The mission turned into a chaotic speedrun through the woods, with the hero sprinting like a madman after the tiny target. Snapping back to the present in the yard, he covers up his embarrassing fail by laughing loud and claiming the catch was super easy, scoring excited claps from his amazed wife. The young woman steps up, touching his arm super sweetly, asking how they should cook that delicious-looking meat for their meal. In a quick, funny banter, the duo debates between salting or roasting the loot, until the partner makes the final call that fire roasting is the meta choice. Petting her hair affectionately, Juin plays along and hypes up that the dish will be an epic salt-crusted roast. Holding the cleaned pelt, Lizzie flashes a big smile, promising the meal will be god tier and telling him to get ready for the feast. A few hours later, the guy flips the meat on the makeshift spit, guessing the wood smoke will buff the spices and veggies to taste insanely good. Poking the logs underneath, he notices the fire's health is dropping and needs more fuel to keep the cooking going. Standing still by the fire, the young guy stares at the flames looking super focused, raising his index finger as he cooks up a pretty risky idea. Staring at the tiny flame on his finger, Juin admits he thought this skill was trash tier, but deep down he figures it might actually be useful. The young guy keeps spinning the roast over the fire, determined to get the food perfectly golden before Lizzie and little Dorothy start starving. Right then he points his index finger straight at the food, spawning tiny glowing sparks. A sudden burst of fire totally swallows the meal, leaving the young guy absolutely terrified by the heat damage. Waving his hands frantically, he begs the fire to cancel itself instantly, since the food is for his family and absolutely cannot get burnt to a crisp. With the fire vanishing fast, the family hero is confused about why the magic decided to actually work right now, after failing a million times before. Digging through his memories, he remembers the boss fight against the giant wolf, realizing the flames didn't shoot out of his own body but spawned directly onto the mob. Touching his jaw, the hero figures out the spell triggers right on the target's surface, not from the palms of his hands, explaining why he never takes self-damage, and decides to instantly test the theory. Kneeling by the roasting stick, he goes into deep focus mode, visualizing the flames hugging the food super gently to cook it. With his eyes closed, the young guy focuses strictly on the objective of giving the food the perfect color texture. The food starts giving off a super strong orange glow, blowing the guy's mind when he realizes his strategy actually worked. The magic energy roasts the food perfectly and evenly, proving he finally unlocked the mechanics to toggle his skills. Totally amazed by his own flex, Juin sits on the rock, shocked he managed to pull off such an epic magic roast. Back inside the house, the food is served in a rustic bowl smelling like heaven, prompting his wife to ask, amazed, what the dish is called, while he plays it cool and just calls it a roast. Sitting at the table, Lizzie thinks the food's name is weird, while little Dorothy taps the table, celebrating with crazy energy that she finally gets to eat meat. Flexing his physical stats, the guy tears off the roast's legs to hand out the highest tier pieces. He hands the food over to his partner and kid, serving it up super politely so they can taste the loot. The two of them take massive bites of the dish at the exact same time, blown away by the god-tier flavor. Lizzie lets out a sound of pure satisfaction, while Dorothy's eyes go wide and sparkly, hyping up how delicious the food tastes. Watching the scene with his chin resting on his hand, Juin thinks he finally gets the old saying that just watching your family eat well is enough to fill your own health bar and bring joy. Enjoying the chill dinner with his girls, he concludes that, once you learn the mechanics, spamming fire magic is actually a super easy side quest. The next day, the guy practices outside the house, successfully sniping an object with fire from a good distance without draining any stamina. Staring at the rock completely scorched by the heat, reality hits him. If he spammed this power in player versus player or against mobs, he'd be packing some seriously terrifying damage per second. Looking at his own hands, the hero celebrates unlocking both the healer and damage skill trees, completely confident that he can now tank any threat to Lizzie and Dorothy. The outline of that weird Santa Claus pops into his head, making the guy suspect the old man gifted him these spells on purpose to guarantee his new family's defense and happiness. Staring at the blue mountain sky, he decides he should probably craft a shrine and drop some food as a thank you when the Christmas event rolls around. Suddenly, the hero's radar catches some noise in the house, realizing the family pet is already awake. Inside, little Dorothy is walking around super hyped, hugging the wooden basket, announcing she's going to give the little pet a grand tour of the base. The girl points straight at the rustic stove, explaining to the little pet that this is the crafting zone where the tasty dishes are made. The exotic little animal just watches everything looking super curious, while the girl stresses that this room is the highest priority zone of all. Continuing the walkthrough, the girl points to the wooden partition, showing the new buddy the cabin's layout. Right after, the kid walks over to her mom, who's sorting items, telling the creature she's about to reveal a super important NPC. Lizzie checks out the rabbit carefully, while Dorothy states with total seriousness that the animal must never forget her mom's face. Just then, the door flies open and our MC enters the room, getting hit with a massive happy scream from the girl. The adoptive dad gives the kid's hair an affectionate ruffle, playing along when she orders the little animal to greet him. Flashing a huge smile, the young guy gets a cute jump scare when the kid announces the creature's name is going to be Dorothy. The couple looks at each other, completely baffled by the naming choice, wondering what the kid is trying to pull. Lizzie tilts her head for a second, processing the innocence of the joke and the meaning behind that jumbled sentence. Suddenly, the young woman goes into shock, coming up with a totally different theory, stuttering the girl's name, looking absolutely floored. Juwon starts sweating bullets, realizing the misunderstanding, catching on that his partner thinks the blonde girl is expecting a baby because of the little animal's shape. Terrified by his wife's insane leap of logic, the young guy drops to his knees on the floor trying to defend himself. Imagining an angelic newborn floating above, Lizzie grabs her hubby's shirt in a panic, fully believing a new player is being spawned right there. The woman's eyes go wide at the crazy scenario, thinking this news is the most bizarre glitch ever. Waving his hands like crazy, the husband debunks the rumor, declaring there is absolutely zero baby and begging her to delete that word from her brain, leaving his partner pretty confused. Wiping the sweat off his face, he sighs, relieved to have cleared up the mess, thinking it's way too early for them to spawn kids and they need to stabilize their run before that happens. Confused by the hero's stance, Dorothy tilts her head while holding the animal and asks why he's kneeling on the floor. Looking super affectionate, Juwon smiles and decides the main quest right now is maxing out his bond with the girl, giving her all the love she never got before. The girl flashes a bright smile, joking that her dad looks exactly like the family pet right now. Looking away nervously, the guy notices the animal's bump grew crazy fast, remembering he ignored the glitch at first since he'd already seen magic and giant wolves in this playthrough. Staring at the weird mob, the family leader wonders to himself if it's actually safe to keep such a buggy creature near his girls. A bit later, Juwon stares at the bamboo fence he built in the yard, stressing over the tough choice of either dropping the baby mob in the woods or keeping it locked up outside. Cutscenes of Lizzie and Dorothy crying desperately in the house play in his head, admitting they both got so attached to the creature in just a few days that he had to say yes. Leaning on the wood, the young guy figures that, minus the weird horn, the beast acts exactly like a harmless rabbit, and he's bummed old Gus isn't around to answer his questions. Remembering his mentor trekking through the dangerous mountain range, the rookie stresses over him being away for 5 days, knowing the old man's age and nerfed leg make heavy grinding tough. Looking at his own hand, Juwon plans to drop his secret about the healing magic once he fully trusts the hunter, so he can fix the guy's leg. Touching the rustic fence, the young guy feels massive respect for all the tutorials and carry he got, swearing to himself he'll pay back the favor one day. Our MC flashes a warm smile, figuring that in a universe where they spawned with zero support, the veteran hunter would perfectly fill the grandpa role for the girl. Watching his wife and daughter chilling together, he realizes the old man would also be an awesome father figure to fix Lizzie's issues. Sitting on the ground outside, he deduces that magic users are insanely rare around here, meaning spamming flashy spells is a massive risk for his family's safety. Putting on a super serious, locked-in face, the hero decides to grind his internal heat control so he can use it daily without pulling aggro from randoms. Searching for absolute focus, Juin visualizes his own mana core glowing deep red, just like magma flowing in a volcano. The young guy flexes his right fingers, trying to route all that magic energy through his own system. Sweating buckets from all the effort, the hero mutters to himself, wondering if the grind finally paid off. Staring at the wooden stakes in the ground he used as targets, he feels pretty salty about the zero visual effects, wondering if his damage was too low or if he messed up the skill rotation. Dropping an exhausted sigh, our MC lowers his arm, betting he still needs a ton of experience to properly control his mystic core. Suddenly, the wooden pieces start glowing orange and catch fire from the inside out, making the rookie scream in total victory. Spotting the fire hazard in the yard, the young guy sprints in a panic carrying a full bucket and yelling for water. Moving fast, the house MVP dumps the whole water bucket on the burning wood to instantly kill the fire. Smoke rises from the cooled wood, making the young guy realize his spell was a flawless victory, burning the target from the inside without showing any flames outside. Juin's face lights up with a winner's smile for mastering the skills so fast, until he gets interrupted by his daughter's hyped voice calling for him. Little Dorothy sprints freely across the yard's grass, calling her dad to come inside because the massive meat feast is finally ready. Overflowing with stamina and absolutely zero fear, the girl hits a massive jump straight toward her adoptive dad. The hero catches the girl midair easily, sweetly warning her about the fall damage risk of jumping so high, while she totally ignores the tip, hyper-focused entirely on the food. Walking toward the house holding the kid, Juin accepts the party invite for the feast, and the kid cheers, hyped for the epic meal waiting for them. But out of nowhere, our MC's confident steps halt in the middle of the yard, his eyes quietly locking onto the edge of the woods. Holding the kid, Juin keeps his crosshairs fixed on the sky just above the forest trees. He spots a massive flock of birds flying in circles, thinking that spawn pattern looks pretty suspicious. The young guy thinks he hasn't seen mobs act like that since he first hit the mountains, but quickly looks away and speedruns a subject change. Getting restless, little Dorothy yells a warning that the food's losing its heat buff, making her adoptive dad apologize for being distracted. Hearing that, the two of them restart their happy walk across the yard to finally enjoy the massive feast. A bit later that same day, the veteran Gus spawns near the wooden fence, summoning the rookie outside. Walking on the grass, our MC tries to figure out why the random encounter, since the mentor usually only logs in during the late night. The veteran hunter spots the new fence being built, and the guy explains the mountain map is dangerous because of the canine mobs and random players. Right then, Juin asks what the old man is doing here at this hour, getting the reply that today's tutorial is all about crafting a bow. Gus spins on his heels and warns that they're only crafting a practice tier item first, and will grind for a real weapon later. Not wasting a single frame, the veteran hunter orders the apprentice to follow him as soon as possible, since their timer is ticking down fast. The young guy follows the command instantly and trails the man to the crafting zone behind the house. Standing in front of a piece of wood, the mentor demands the protagonist pay close attention to every single detail. Right after, he places a thick piece of firewood on the crafting bench while gripping a cutting tool. To kick off the craft, Gus shows a smaller piece of wood, warning that you have to prep this first before doing anything else. Wielding a heavy, rustic tool, the man starts hammering the smaller piece, wedging it into the top of the firewood. He repeats the animation with perfect accuracy, showing the text step by step. The hunter explains you shouldn't sink the tool too deep, guiding him to split the wood gradually. Watching closely, the young guy gets that the meta isn't to shatter the material in one hit, but to use multiple small pieces to slowly break the log apart. Hours roll by, and the afternoon vibe stays chill under the rustic roof of the old, isolated cabin. Handing over the crafted item, Gus tells the apprentice to save that data, but Juin quickly gets a suspicious feeling that something is totally off. The apprentice reads his mentor's body language, finding the crazy rush to speedrun all the tutorials super weird, totally contradicting his promise to take the leveling slow. Stressed about the fast pace, his paranoia spikes and he asks straight up if a bad event is triggering, or if the mountain zone just got a massive difficulty spike out of nowhere. Pointing at the sky, the old man argues that the flock of birds circling way out there probably means some NPC got ganked by beasts. Then he hands the starter weapon over to the young guy, ordering him to use the item strictly for training mode. Already heading out, the old man announces the rest of the tutorial is postponed, and the guy just says thanks for the carry. The veteran hunter keeps walking down the forest path, leaving the young guy behind. As he walks, a dark, calculating look takes over the hooded man's face. In his thoughts, he remembers how a few days ago he visited the human village to leak the coordinates of the beast's spawn point to the local chief. Armed with that critical intel, the village chief dispatched his own eldest son on a quest to a nearby zone to call for backup. The guy's destination was a guild branch located in the city where transports usually hit their checkpoints. Even though it's a minor branch, the veteran knows the higher-ups act fast to recruit pro players for the raid. Gus estimates the backup squad will hit the zone in a few days, but refuses to drop his guard, knowing those beasts have insane movement speed. Staring at the black birds chilling on the branches, he figures the flying mobs the kids saw were just hovering over dropped loot. From his earlier scouting, the master already noticed a hidden squad of leftover mobs camping near that area. He guesses that having a woman roaming solo through the brush was the perfect bait to pull the aggro of those bloodthirsty beasts. Knowing how toxic those monsters are, he predicts this threat is going to blow up fast and wipe out the human village. Laser-focused on his own master plan, the veteran reassures himself that sacrificing a lot of players is totally required to unlock a higher achievement. The visual of Juin running for his life through the woods pops into his head, betting everything on the young guy's survival stats. Standing with his back turned, the hunter calculates that even if the rookie's partner gets deleted in this upcoming raid, things will balance out. He agrees that the death will shatter the kid's soul at first, but believes that as long as our MC stays alive, he can always just roll a new family. Back inside his hidden base, Gus stares at his old, rusty weapons, feeling like luck finally smiled on him at the end of his playthrough. For a guy who spent his entire run playing the hunter class, getting the chance to face his final boss raid is the ultimate legendary drop. The old man grabs his massive, ancient blade, pulling the weapon from its rack with absolute certainty. Wielding the giant artifact in the middle of his base, he overflows with hype, swearing there's no better serotonin boost than this. During the freezing night, the young wife opens the wooden door and steps out, shivering and trying to stay warm. She spots her husband's silhouette working near the rustic fence, lit up by the moonlight. Walking slowly across the dark grass, Lizzie gets the hero's attention by calling his name. Seeing his partner, Juin looks worried and instantly asks why she logged out of the house in this freezing weather. Super gently, the woman holds out a bowl of hot food, asking him to restore his health, leaving the young guy massively moved by the gesture. He says thanks for the buff and tells her to head back inside, but his wife insists on partying up with him until he finishes eating. The hero just stares at her speechless, feeling his heart melt at how dedicated she is. Chilling by the fire in the yard, our MC hypes up the food, declaring the whole meal is insanely delicious. Super happy with the review, Lizzie swears it took zero effort and shows she's thrilled he liked the loot. The young guy keeps staring softly at his wife, soaking up that peaceful AFK moment. Unable to hold back, Juin wraps his partner in a super protective back hug while she holds the bowl. Resting his face against hers, he says he's incredibly thankful for everything, but the young woman leans her face back, returning the thanks. The two of them stay glued together there in the dark, warmed up by the fire and their mutual love. The next morning, the couple grinds the laundry quest side by side at the riverbank, with the hero offering to solo the chore, but the young woman insists that co-op clears it way faster. Wringing out a huge chunk of wet cloth, Juin uses a ton of stamina and jokes in his head that manual labor is making him miss electric washing machines like crazy. Checking the overflowing bucket, the young guy thinks about the exhausting strategy of soaking clothes in chemicals all night just to wash and hang them in the morning. He watches his partner scrubbing the clothes in the stream with crazy stamina, feeling bad that she soloed this hardcore daily quest until now. Just then, little Dorothy spawns, sprinting freely along the water's edge, yelling for both of them at top volume. The girl holds up the tiny creature, pointing at her dad and begging him to spam the healing spell one more time, making the guy realize he totally forgot to check that stat. He zeroes in on a horn-shaped object sitting in the basket, and the girl proudly drops the lore that her mom crafted the item yesterday. Giving the kid an affectionate head pat, Juin agrees the crafted gear looks super cute, making the girl incredibly happy. Right after, he slowly reaches out his arm to inspect the creature closely. The second his hands touch the beast's horn, a faint glow starts radiating from the animal, catching the guy off guard. The light wraps around the little animal's head, leaving the head of the house absolutely mind-blown by that random magic glitch. But the light despawns super fast, and the hero complains that the veteran gave him exactly 0 patch notes about this. In his mind, he tries to pull up the chat logs with his master during the shooting tutorial the other day. Trying to decode the old man's dialogue, he remembers the tip that big-eared mobs with horns are a totally different class. Holding the creature in the air, the young guy remembers the beast belongs to a class of magic mobs that spawn in the woods. The mentor had sworn that, even though wild beasts are dangerous, taming them from level 1 is super chill and basically the meta for the locals. Kneeling next to the girl, the dad stares at the little pet looking deep in thought, confused why the creature's glow was never mentioned in the tutorials and doubting if they accidentally hunted a rare spawn. Holding the tiny beast, Juin pets the horn and wonders what's triggering the item's glow, praying the mob doesn't turn hostile. The little creature drops a super weird, high-pitched audio cue, while the guy vows he'd never let anything drop Lizzie and Dorothy's health points. Just then, he lifts the pet to his face, asking if the mob actually understands the dialogue, but instantly realizes the exotic beast has no clue what he's talking about. Dropping the mobs back in the basket, the hero decides he's going to interrogate veteran Gus about this bug in the next session, while the girl demands with crazy energy that he lock in the pet's names. The little girl points at the basket, demanding the tags be as insanely pretty as hers. Resting his hand on his face, the dad thinks for a second and decides it's totally meta to use matching themes since the kid's name is Dorothy. Looking at the live pet, he officially tags it as Oz. And for the crafted toy item, he locks in the name Toto. Holding the wooden basket, the girl is totally enchanted by the options and says all 3 names with massive happiness. The girl jumps around the grass celebrating her brand new duo of pets, leaving the young guy super satisfied with his kid's reaction. Overflowing with absolute joy, Dorothy lets out an incredibly happy, contagious laugh. Way outside the mountain zone, the vibe in the human village is pure panic, with NPCs talking about the leak that the green mobs are planning a raid on the town. They claim that's exactly why the chief's heir fast-traveled to get backup, bringing up old lore that those monsters wipe everyone and only keep the female characters alive. Freaking out, one of the guys suggests they abandon the server immediately, admitting his sleep schedule is totally wrecked from the stress. Nearby, a worker complains about having to wash a public wagon that nobody even uses, while his co-op partner tells him to stop whining. The guy argues that the cleaning quest should be a server-wide event, warning that the vehicle is the only escape route if the beasts breach the zone. With zero patience, the partner calls the guy a noob and explains that if the village leader uses his personal transport to ditch them, everyone will notice and report him for griefing. The chief's wife stealths in, demanding the guy shut up and ordering him to stash loot in the transport when the other NPC's vision cones are turned away. Spinning on her heels, the woman mutters that literally nothing is going right, and feels salty that the meetup with the informant totally failed. The region's chief spawns in full of rage, complaining that the buyer only wanted to check the caster's power level, since healers like that have a crazy low drop rate. Punching the crates in pure tilt, the chief screams that all his strategies are completely failing. Deep in the woods, veteran Gus uses stealth in the branches, while a massive roar shatters the server's silence. The hunter watches the goblins dealing brutal damage to each other, realizing that those beasts' toxic AI inevitably triggers friendly fire. Seeing the massive damage numbers from the monster brawl, the mentor gets that a mutiny just triggered, proving their zero food supply and evil code finally hit the limit. He's 100% sure the losers will get kicked from the clan and march straight to the village for female spawns, but thinks the event triggered way too early. The hunter calculates that if the mobs raid before backup arrives, his god-tier master plan gets completely wiped, thinking about using an emergency item to reroute the beast's path. Debating which way to kite the goblins, the visual of the old rustic cabin pops up as the perfect decoy target. The old man's face turns totally villainous as he confirms that isolated base will easily tank the beast wave. Checking his memory logs, he remembers little Dorothy was a traumatized NPC who never smiled and constantly avoided co-op interactions. Thinking about the kid who finally unlocked the happiness achievement, the old man admits it sucks she found joy right before the end, but figures the timer for feeling guilty already ran out. To clear his own debuffs, Gus assures himself the woman and kid are just randoms with no ties to the village, making them the ultimate sacrifice. A painful flashback stuns him, remembering when he power-leveled his own kid from level 1 to main the hunter class. Back in the day, the old man shed tears claiming the kid had pro-tier hunting stats but totally failed as a human, regretting that the build would only lead to a game over. But the kid just swiped away his dad's support, stating with zero empathy that his current build was exactly what he wanted. Snapping back to the hardcore reality of the dense jungle, the veteran hunter stays locked in on his ruthless strategy. Flashing a psycho smile, he leaks that he's got a main quest to complete even if it means his health hits zero, claiming that feeling this final rush is his true endgame content. The old man is absolutely certain Juin will absorb all his skill trees, trusting his tutorials will class change the rookie into the ultimate hunter his own heir failed to be. Checking the map, the old man spots that the kicked mob wave just started marching straight for the human spawn zone. Moving fast, he reaches into his inventory bag and equips the crisis item he kept stashed away. With a quick animation, the veteran throws the item deep into the bushes to pull the beast's aggro toward the rustic cabin's coordinates. Way outside that danger zone, a basic rabbit mob hops peacefully through the grass with zero clue a raid is incoming. Juin walks with muted footsteps, using the stealth mechanics he leveled up over the past few days. Making zero audio cues, the young guy locks into position and aims at the target, 100% focused on his daily kill quest. Cleaning his blade after the task, he realizes his fear debuff is completely gone and the disgust he felt from deleting mobs just isn't there anymore. Hiking back down the path, our MC sighs, realizing he totally adapted to this hardcore server without even noticing his own character development. Suddenly, the rookie hero's walking animation gets cancelled, distracted by a random event in the woods. He turns his camera to look at an unmapped area of the forest, curious because he's never unlocked that section of the mountain map. Scanning the distant environment, the young guy checks his user interface and notices he still has plenty of downtime before he needs to log back in at base. Deciding to explore, the young guy's legs alter their path instantly, ditching the main questline route. Holstering his weapon on his back, Juin decides to use the detour to place some brand new traps along the way, completely clueless that he's walking straight into the most hardcore player versus player zone in the entire mountain range.